Hey, good evening, everyone. At this time, I would like to open up our work session. As always, I would ask everyone who's able to please stand, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, welcome everyone to work session number 4. At this time, I will turn it over to the city manager.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. What we have on the agenda for tonight are the City Manager's Office for review, and the Finance Department, and the non-departmental component of the budget. And we'll start with the City Manager's Office, and the first division there is the City Council's division. The City Council is the governing body of the city, elected by and responsible to the voters for the operation of the city. The council is responsible for municipal policies. The council appoints the city manager, city attorney, board of supervisors of elections, all standing advisory committees, special task force groups, and study committees. The objectives for the council in 24 was to coordinate with the city clerk and city manager, provide an orientation sessions for council after the November 23rd election. The objective was completed 100%, and the orientation sessions were held and attended. 2025, identify and evaluate community initiatives worthy of the city council support with a municipal grant. This was an initiative that occurred, for all who remember, when we were operating out of room 243, and $100,000 is set forth in the budget to support community initiatives determined by the city council. Currently, from my perspective, this money is uncommitted, but if you all approve it, will be available. Okay, so those are the objectives, and obviously there are 7 people on the council. Salaries, wages, $145,000. Fringe benefits, $11,500. Contractual services, $134,000 for the lobbyists to assist with legislative issues and other consultant services. Travel and training, $31,900. And as I mentioned, down in 52005, commodities, to provide for the procurement of office supply, to support community initiatives determined by the city council and fund. And also under 55090, 119,900 for Maryland Municipal League, Council of Governments, and Regional Environmental Fund, National League of Cities, and other subscriptions. Any questions about the city council's proposed budget for 2025?
Councilmember Brady.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 quick items that fall under this. Under the community grants, not that I'm suggesting we change or modify the objective, but rather I think we in the near future need to have a discussion and set up some parameters, procedures, and processes in place so that if we move forward and utilizing that $100,000, we need to do it in an appropriate way, because I think it has the potential of being corrupting for us. Second, I would like to add an objective for FY25 to fund council participation in this September's ICSC Mid-Atlantic Region event in Washington, D.C., and that would be about $4,600 that have to be added for that. And then lastly, I think also an objective should be added. I believe we need to have a discussion, this body and staff, on what we mean by economic development and what the vision is and where we're wanting to go and how do we get there. So I think we need to include an item in the objectives for us to do that this year, with the possible expectation that next year we may have to do some actual funding for whatever we think is an appropriate thing. So those are my comments on this part of the budget.
Thank
What
you.
is it?
Oh,
Council Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. What session you want to do in DC? What program or project, or I didn't understand what it was in DC.
the last one, all of them?
No. I think it was
He
the
was
second
talking
one.
about going to,
The, was it International Shopping Centers Convention?
Oh, okay, sure. Gotcha. Thank you.
Mid-Atlantic.
They have a national in Las Vegas, and my understanding, and I think many people are convinced that that is of lesser utility to us than the regional one, because the regional ones are the players for the region, Maryland, Bowie, and what have you. So I think we ought to have a presence there, and I wouldn't worry about going to Las Vegas.
I would agree with that. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
all right, any other questions on Councilwoman Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager, does this include any type of follow-up for our strategic planning? Is there anything in here that, and I know the city is going to kind of mesh out what we started, but there's going to be times where we're going to need to pull in facilitators to help us through our strategic planning process.
So yes, under the professional services, the budget is presented with $20,000 for that activity and that effort. So it's not a large sum, but it is some that is included in there.
Okay, so with regard to the objectives that Councilman Brady recommended, one of them was to fund the council's attendance to the ICSC at the National Harbor, correct?
I'm sorry, what?
So you're funding the council attendance to the ICSC local
The local one in Washington, D.C. in
September, and what are you pointing to? So that's the 4,600, and your cost, the additional cost is $4,600 for all persons attending, correct?
For, I understand all but the mayor and councilwoman.
Okay.
And Nadu are already members of it, so
All right.
that doesn't include that. So that's
Good.
why it's 4,600.
So is there a consensus for that?
You bet.
All right, and the issue of defining, taking steps as an objective to define economic development and making that an objective for the council. Is there a consensus for that? Thank you. Any other questions about the city council budget?
Councilwoman Rogers, are you finished? Was that it? Your question?
I think it is, Mr. Mayor. I think I was told that the strategic planning funds were provided here in
that 20K.
the
Yes.
contractual services, but whether or not it stands out as an objective, I'm not sure. I don't know if it should be or not.
Well, that's certainly up to you all, whether you want to make it an objective. We
Well-
plan to continue with, and work with the mayor and continue the process, but it's.
So
it's
if
up
I
to you all.
propose it as an objective, then that means somebody's going to look at it and it's going to be measured, right?
Yes,
All right, I would like to propose it to be an objective.
and what would you like for it to say?
That's a good question, Mr. City Manager. The objective is to actually complete our strategic planning process for our mission, vision, and strategic objectives in fiscal year 2025.
Just vision,
And that includes public input.
so vision, What were those things you read off there? Vision, what else?
Vision, mission,
Right.
strategic objectives, and that includes resident participation.
Got it. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilwoman Mamdouh.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, colleagues and city staff, as well as City of Bowie residents. My question or clarification that I'd like to get, the first one is, in terms of the budget objective that was just added in regards to the strategic plan, the last agenda that I saw was much more of a team building exercise than it was a strategic vision or objective setting. And so I'd like to just get clarification on the objective that was just set. Is the intent that we would establish those objectives, like strategic objectives, breaking it down by district and holistic city by 2025? Or what exactly are we trying to get at, and what would be like the OKR that we're measuring?
Well, I'll start. At the last session, there were drafts of the mission and the vision that your peers successfully got to, and a lot of planning, a lot of foundation for the next step. We are working with the mayor and working to go to the next step so we can continue that. I'll let Councilman Rogers, speak in detail on her objective.
Thank you. Councilwoman, what I was trying to do is ensure that strategic planning, its objective stays in the front of the council so that we can continue the process. Strategic planning is not a one-day retreat, it's an ongoing process. So we started crafting out a vision and a mission, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done with the strategic objectives to engage the community and looking at the vision and the mission, and then coming back and creating tactical objectives that our city committees can use as guidance so that they're all connected to what we have scoped out for the vision, so that we're all moving in the same direction. So my reason for the objective was to keep it in front of us so that we won't lose sight of how important strategic planning is, and so that we recognize it's just not a one-day event. So this is a all-inclusive objective. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much for the clarification. The one thing that I'd like to offer to that objective is it would be helpful for me, and I think I speak on behalf of District 4, to essentially have an exercise where we can go by district and understand, like, what are those priorities for that district that residents are looking to see, as well as, some of our committee members, and then what are those gaps that we currently have so that we can figure out how to close the delta and align that with the mission and the vision going forward, like across the holistic city. So let me repeat that just to make sure it makes sense. So it would be helpful by district to understand, like, what are those priorities and what are those gaps currently existing by district, and then look at that holistically as a broader city to figure out where the commonalities are, where the trend threads are, so that we can craft a holistic mission or strategic objectives that are targeted that we can accomplish going forward. And that's the suggestion that I would add to your objective.
And you're on point. That's where we would be going. So you're on point as part of that whole conversation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Rogers. That concludes my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions or comments at the time? All right.
Just so, to make sure, we're all consensus on the last objective too, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, let's move on to the city manager's budget here. The city manager is the chief administrative officer of the city. The city manager supervises all staff and is responsible for effective management of all financial and administrative actions of the city. City manager is appointed by and serves at the pleasure of the city council. The city manager is responsible for implementing all policy matters established by the city council and for the enforcement of all city ordinances. City manager keeps the council informed through a variety of reporting procedures that assist the council in its policymaking role. For FY 2024, the city manager's office had a goal of coordinate with the city council and city clerk to provide an orientation session for council after the November 23rd election. An objective was completed at 100%. The orientation sessions were held and attended by the newly elected officers. The workload and performance measures are really close. Also, objective for 2025, we are going to conduct a team building training among senior management team by February of 2025 to work on our efficiency and cohesiveness as a managerial unit. The significant budget change here is that 0.5 FTE customer service rep X 108 at the cost of $25,058. That person will be assigned to support the Employ Prince George's effort that's going to be conducted in Ken Hill with regard to job searching and training. So, moving to our next page here, which is 52 in your book. The big expense here is it's the same, is salary and wages at $1,014,500. Fringe benefits $306,600. Contractual services $88,900. We use consultants with managing electricity and natural gas contracts, consultants for conduct fair housing training associated with City's Community Development Block Grant, strategic planning consultant, and senior staff development. We have $390,800 in municipal grants down at 5505, and that would be community development block grants in specific. So are there any questions related to the city manager's budget?
Any questions regarding the city manager's budget?
Pretty simple.
Councilmember Steve?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, can you remind me exactly what Employ Prince George's is doing at the community center and our connection with our new 0.5 FTE?
We're going to let Mr. Boggs come over and give us a better explanation than I might. To step. All right. Go ahead, Jesse.
An embarrassment of riches.
Member X. Good evening. Employer Prince George is going to provide us with a grant for 5 computers that we're going to locate at Ken Hill Center. We're taking over space there. And those 5 computers will be tied directly to Employer Prince George's entire workforce development system that will enable all the residents of the city on a scheduled basis to come in and use those computers to do all the things that we were attempting to do when we had a $50,000 contract with Coursera. Plus, Employer Prince George will provide for us a advisor and counselor that will assign an individual person to each one of the residents that comes through to help guide them from whether they're students or not, all the way to adults with pursuing new jobs, upskilling, and other certification requirements that they would like to pursue. So the facility will consist of 5 computers, a printer. This person will work part-time, doing scheduled hours to facilitate that operation.
Understood. And so this program will be available to all residents?
Yes, all residents, and we try to do it some few hours during the day, few days during the week, and also in the evenings.
So evenings and a few hours during the day. Would this be available to students in Bowie?
Yes, it will.
Okay. How about city employees?
Yes, it will.
Okay. So people are able to go to the Kent Hill Center and use one of 5 computers, and it'll be staffed during the hours that it's open, and it'll help connect people to jobs through the Employee Prince George's program.
Correct.
Great. My only ask, this is one of those like really delightful programs that no one's going to find out about unless we're very loud about it. So my ask as it relates to this, if none of my councils object, is that our comms office be very loud about this program and really make sure people know. I also would really like us to make sure that we're thinking about how we can reach out to our seniors as well. So what I'm discovering about a lot of our young people is a lot of our young people aren't looking for jobs. Specifically, their parents are looking for them to do sports or internships or go abroad or whatever the case is. It's a lot of our seniors that are looking for part-time work right now. We have a lot of folks who are in their 80s and 90s who are bored out of their minds, still sound of mind and body, and want to get involved. So making sure that we're working with our seniors as well in this program will be really important.
We'll make it so.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buggs. I appreciate your work.
Any other questions, Council? Councilwoman Babadu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, my camera just went out, but I'll switch laptops here in a second. I appreciate Councilmember Esteb answering that question. I think this is a phenomenal program, and I think what I would be looking to learn from the outcome of it is just kind of like tracking a little bit of the results of like how many people it's able to help, just kind of gleaning like where things are in our city with our workforce to understand like how we can further best partner with other organizations or continue to invest on that side. One thing that I do want to highlight and amplify, and I think it might be good for me to include you in this conversation, Mr. Buggs, but I was really thinking about Todd, is I just got off a call. My prior call was with Prince George's County, who's establishing an artificial intelligence task force with many of the software business owners, as well as our county CIO, Wanda Gibson. And essentially what they are focused on is workforce development and aims at rebranding Prince George's County as a technology corridor and this technology hub to further attract a bigger anchor employer to Prince George's County. So it might be helpful for us to possibly think about how to engage you in that conversation and synergize efforts. I think they are working with Walter a little bit, but not as intentionally. But I want to make sure that we are kind of synergizing and that we're kind of crossing all of our T's and dotting our I's. So I think that might be a helpful conversation for you to be a part of, especially with this new initiative that I think is great. I think it's wonderful to think about the seniors as well, because I hear a lot of that feedback. Specifically in District 4, we do have a lot of people that are in the senior population that are looking to attract new skills and figure out how to pivot back into the workforce from retirement. A lot of our veterans who are also returning home are looking for new industries to pivot into. And I do +1 to the comments on our younger audience. I think for them, it's much more about skills development and looking at how to develop certain exposures to newer areas of interest as opposed to pure workforce transition. So I think that will be a really good thing to focus on. I think my main question here on the 0.5 customer service person, we had talked a couple of months ago about someone that would help support city council a little bit more. So will that person also have those shared responsibilities, or is this person just aimed at kind of supporting that program and some of the programmatic things that the city is doing? I just want to make sure that our constituents feel like they're supported and the response times are within an appropriate timing for their liking, given that many of the city council members are not full-time employees and we may not always be at our computers and emails all day. So I just wanted to see if that was part of that addition, since we talked about that a couple months ago.
No, it isn't. It's going to only support that operation in Kent Hill.
If I may, city manager, is there anywhere in the budget allocation to provide some assistance to council members in being able to respond back to issues and other things that may go on? Is there anywhere that we've placed anything?
No, sir. The only support to the city council is with the city clerk and the assistant city clerk. there were no directives or initiatives from the discussion, so I haven't added to it, but, no, sir.
Okay, now, I think the question, and Councilwoman, if I'm jumping ahead of you, let me know. I think the question is what, as the city is growing and as council members are getting more and more questions pushed through, whether or not the city clerk has the manpower, should those assisting with responding back to constituents and those kind of things, should those be pushed through the city clerk, and if so, for assistance, and if so, does the city clerk have enough manpower to be able to assist with that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, in this council manager form of government that we have here today, we are not designed to do that. And there are no facilities for this. The city clerk and assistant city clerk, and we're going to get to that in a moment, and that may be the best time to talk about it, where we can, if you see all the work that they are required to do. Just 3 years ago, we added the assistant clerk just to keep up with the records management and all the things, the caring and feeding of you all, you know. So generally in the council manager form of government, there's no direct support like that. Otherwise, we would have to have somebody to support each one of you all to make it equitable, and it could be costly. But if that's what the council wants to do, we could work on that. But right now, it isn't in this system or any of the council manager systems that are in the area right now. For that.
And understanding the type of government we have, I think we understand that. But the point I was getting at is, as you know, there are times where there are questions that are asked that we have to reach back to staff, to you, and say, okay, we need to get to the bottom. You know, we all do that, and saying, okay, can you follow up on this and that and other? One of the things I'm asking is, if the proper way we want to do it is through the city clerk, does she have we've seen, even if we don't enhance it any more than we have, but does she have enough to keep up with what we're currently doing at this time?
Well, she has enough to keep up with what is currently assigned for her to do in the charter. Now, as far as working on issues associated with residents, that's what we're here for.
Right.
So if there are any issues that come up that way, send them to me or the assistant city manager, and we are competitively working to get them corrected and answers back. And that's our job, and that's how it's set up.
And again, my question here, I think kind of following up on the councilwoman, is to make sure that we are putting out there that if there is additional support required, that we make sure we address it now and we get that out there. If you're saying you're fine in being able to assist and those kind of things, then that's fine. This is just giving you an opportunity to put the word out if you like. Councilwoman, go right ahead.
If I may, I think with all due respect, we did talk about this a couple of months ago. It's a recorded city council meeting where we specifically talked about constituent response times and some challenges that a constituent had. And we made it very clear. And I think, if I may, quote unquote, one of the things that you had mentioned, Mr. Mayor, was that if we could look at ways to really offset that and make sure that constituents have the support that they need to be able to decrease those response times and some of those kind of follow-ups with a lot of these agency touch points. I think the reality is less about the fact that we have these jobs or whatever the case may be. It's the reality is that oftentimes constituents may reach out to myself or another council member for the district that they represent. And oftentimes those conversations will need to go right back to staff because they are a more detailed question for staff that require contextual knowledge from staff. And then what ends up happening is then we play messenger, and then that delays, and then the constituent is left frustrated because then days have gone by where they haven't gotten to the pinpoint of what it is that they're trying to solve or what is impeding whatever their quality of life is in that moment. So I don't necessarily know, since we have had this conversation conversation before, if that is the recommendation of a process change where essentially when something is brought to city staff, where they handle the follow-up. And I remember the direct response from the city manager at that time was they didn't have the capacity for that and would need more headcount. And that was directly that response in that meeting. And so I'm not exactly sure on what the path is forward because this conversation has a little bit changed. But really what I'm looking to get at here is decrease response time for constituents when it involves other government agency, whether that's the transition to the county or that's the transition to another member of staff in a different department, or if that's the transition to a state agency, just really handling that handoff so it doesn't left with days gone by because they're waiting for a council member to respond who may not have access to their email all the time.
Councilwoman, I think my attempt was to articulate that, and if I didn't, please bear with me, because the point I'm getting at is the same thing, of making sure that we have the resources, that when we do that, we can do that in a timely manner, and just wanted to make sure that city staff had the resources they needed to be able to support us, as we do send most of those things to you for more detailed information. So I just want to make sure, I think we're on the same page there. I think what I'm saying is, city staff, this is a case where you can step in and say, we need additional support on that, or you're saying, just bring it on and we're okay where we are.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Please, go ahead. I was gonna let city manager and then you, if he'd like
I just
to.
wanted to say one thing, because I recall the conversation, because there was a concern about those of us, council members who did not have access during the workday to the platform that would allow you to even check during lunch to see whether or not there was any constituent inquiries in. And so part of that conversation was trying to figure out those who don't want to carry around their laptops, to their workplaces, what they could do in order to access emails and respond to constituents, or even forward them to the email to the city more promptly, instead of having to wait until the workday is over. So, I mean, that's a real basic, kind of check the box fix. And so I do think that would be a good step in that direction to respond to constituents' concerns quicker, because you have better availability and access if you're not sitting in front of your laptop at home or wherever you have it at. Yes.
So we have multiple ways that our constituents can reach out to the city and essentially put in their constituent concern. We have availability through our, we have an app, My Bowie MD, where people may report concerns and issues directly to the city, which are routed directly to the appropriate department. We have also access through the city's website, through which people may find the direct contact information to get to the specific spot that they want to get to in regards to an issue. We have telephone numbers that are published, so people may call the individual department, may call the city general number directly and get routed to the correct person. We have opportunities for people to contact the city manager's office directly in regards to those concerns. There are some constituents that like to contact their council member in regards to that, and we handle those in a variety of ways as well. Sometimes we get a concern from a council member that comes directly to us that says, here's an issue from this constituent. Would you please address this and follow up with the constituent? And we do that. We have other concerns and say, could you get me information on this so I can respond to my constituent? And we do that. So we have a whole variety of ways that we respond to our constituents. Frankly, we're not seeing an issue in terms of response times overall in terms of that, since we have so many different ways that we can communicate with our residents. We do have variety in regards to the council in terms of how they prefer to interact with the city staff, and we try to be responsive to all of those. I don't necessarily think we have a capacity issue. It's a matter of what is the preference in regards to how people approach, interact with the city, and how that response comes back.
If I may.
You go ahead.
Let me just, because I don't want us to get wrapped around the axle on this, because I think we're all kind of saying the same thing, or trying to get to the same result. And my point would be, let me ask a more pointed question. If a concern from a constituent comes in, do we prefer that we send that directly to the city man? And I know we have some ability to make a determination and that, but is it preferred to go directly to the city clerk's office or directly to the city manager's office? Please,
We
your thoughts.
we don't want them to go to the city clerk's office, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
They've got enough to do. I mean,
That
they're
was where I was getting at,
overwhelmed
so.
right now. So if there's a request that anybody on the council gets from a resident, send it right to me.
Okay.
And we'll be on it that day within minutes of it arriving on via email. Of course, you also have the option, since I believe that we're all one leadership team here, especially since our team building situation, we're closer now. But, you know, if you get a request from your resident and you know that it's a public works issue, then send the email, the request to Jose. Copy me, and it's in the system the same way. And Jose's gonna work really hard to get it done really fast. So all I ask is that you copy me so I know it's happening and that I can reinforce and make sure Jose doesn't drop the ball because he's a busy man. Those are the ways we can do it. Also, he mentioned, Daniel mentioned that we have a 311 system where residents several automated systems, they can put requests in to the city. And I get a lot of emails directly to me. For example, the HOA from Highbridge. That HOA director emails me directly with every request he has. And I respond to them really fast, really quick, because that's my job. And we do that. So we let that happen. Now, also I know from my 20+ years of working in this business, there are some residents who do not want to talk to me. They want to talk to you. They want to communicate with you. And I don't want to interfere with that because they would rather hear from the person they voted for. Now, that's just the way that is. And so that's why when Mr. Wolfley sends me emails at 2 o'clock in the morning from 4 or 5 residents, and I'm working on them because I know those people would prefer to hear from him. And but either one of those ways will work for us. We will be on it as soon as we get it. And we do have all of our departments, and we have a business operation division that's specifically designed to deal with all of the agencies who could be troublesome. WSSC, PEPCO, BG&E, Comcast, all those people who we don't control, but affect our residents. We have a division that person's job is to know somebody everywhere. So we can get to those and work those issues specifically. And we think we're pretty responsive.
Yeah, I appreciate.
But that's how we do it. But not the clerk.
I
Because the
appreciate
clerk
you
and they're busy.
Yeah, I appreciate you reinforcing that. And again, there was an opportunity if there was any additional resources needed. And it sounds like there aren't any. Councilwoman, does that address that from your perspective that?
I think it would, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think it does definitely address the question that I'm raising and the process that I'm looking to get at. I think I just think if there's a way to ensure that going forward, that has not been my experience. I did have an example with the Oarsman dealership where the lights were on and I think it took 48 hours for someone to even possibly go there. And by that time I had resolved it. And so I think that just hasn't consistently been my experience. And so going forward, if there's a way to ensure that that is the concrete experience, and I understand that there are residents who do prefer to talk to council members directly and do not want to deal with members and staff, but I also have many constituents who don't care as long as their solution or whatever it is that they're raising is solved by somebody within the city government. And so that's what I'm trying to get at, is making sure that days don't go by when an issue is raised and somebody is able to hop on that and solve it. So since that hasn't been my experience, I will take it at its word. If that we can ensure that going forward, that's absolutely fine.
Hey, thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Rogers?
Yes, thank you. So what I want to do is clarify. So I'm a bigger picture person, so not only am I concerned about response to constituents, I also want to make sure that I stay engaged. We live in the largest municipality in Prince George's County, the 5th largest in the state. So when there is a tornado coming through and Wanda is in Hawaii somewhere, I have no way of knowing, what the heck is going on until I get back home and look at my laptop and I'm opening up and like, oh my God, Lee sent this and I had no idea. So my thing is more broad and base in the sense of communications, not only around constituent services, because when I go out to see constituents, I give them my business card from the city council with my phone number on it, all right? So yeah, I'll get phone calls and I'll get email, but I'm just talking from a communications perspective. I am accustomed to the opportunities for those that are responsible for running things to be engaged however often they want to be engaged or how much they want to be engaged through communications, both coming into us, like information flowing in from the city, as well as constituents sending information. So it's real basic, and if that's not the way we're prepared to operate now, that's fine, but I think we should take a more holistic view of communications, not only constituency responses, but also keeping your council and engaged on what's going on. So that's why I said, if there was an opportunity for me to look at Outlook on my cell phone, which there isn't, then I could, if I'm in Hawaii, I can look at this and say, oh, what's going on? If I see a constituent issue, it doesn't have to wait until I get back home 3-4 weeks later. I can do it right then and there. So I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just asking you to think about it in a more holistic perspective in the sense of communications. Totally. That's all I'll say, and I thank you for the opportunity to say that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I just add one more point just really quickly, if you don't mind? It's very brief.
Go
I think
right.
also the last point too, we hit it on I think Councilwoman Rogers, that was very eloquently stated. We hit on a couple of the mechanisms in which we have for constituents to engage. And I think the only suggestion and feedback that I would also have, if constituents, and I'm not saying this applies to all constituents, I'm only speaking from the perspective of the ones that I engage in District 4. If they're not following a process, that signals that there might be a disconnect somewhere. And in my experience, on going on 5 years on this body, it seems like there might be a disconnect in the way that constituents engage with the methodologies and how we create service requests, whether that's they don't like to sit on the phone with 311. Maybe and when they go to the website, the service center, it's not in a color that's appealing to them. I don't know what that is, but I'm also just offering that up as an added suggestion as well, that if that process is not holistically working across the city, then perhaps there might be a gap somewhere that we might need to look in how we make that more effective to drive the behavior for constituents to be able to effectively also report their request there and also be able to track it when it's completed from the city as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions at this time? I beat that dead horse. Yeah, so.
I'll do it offline.
Okay. City Manager, we're turning it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That makes me happy here. Let's move on. Okay. Human Resources is our next division. It provides service support, staffing solutions to the city operations, taking a leading role in vital areas such as talent acquisition, employee and labor relations, benefits administration, performance management, compensation analysis, in a primary objective of this office is to ensure that the city of Bowie maintains the most talented, highly engaged, and well-equipped staff as possible. In 2024, the objectives were to create a new employee orientation program that was completed in March, ensure that the city participates in 3 in-person virtual job recruitment fairs. That was completed in March. To conduct 10 employee wellness-related events by June 30, 2024. That has been completed also. To establish and cultivate partnerships with Bowie State Administration for the purpose of developing mutually beneficial recruitment, internship, and other employment opportunities by December 2023. So the partnership has been established and is being maintained, and that objective has been completed. There's been with regard to 2025, the objectives are to implement a new employee performance evaluation system in Bamboo HR, which is a new automated HR automated system that we have. Conduct 10 employee wellness related events by June 30, 2025. Migrate all enrollment and employee benefit management processes to that Bamboo software that I mentioned before by October 2024. The significant changes are to reclassify 1 HR generalist 2 from X113 to X114 with an increase of 4796, and also to promote an HR generalist, which is a 112, to an HR generalist 2, which is X114. In both cases, those are efforts to reward and retain outstanding employees who are exceptionally competent, qualified, and have increased their qualifications and abilities over the years. And also, so therefore, we will end up with a number 6 people in that department to support a talent base of over 400, which is quite a task for any group. The big expenses are salary and wages, $543,400, fringe benefits, $174,800, contractual services for the software I mentioned, the Bamboo software, the open enrollment module that we use in this fall to bring the benefits to our employees. Also at 51130, that's $86,000, all onboarding expenses for new employees, advertising, vacancies, and such. The most difficult thing that we do here in the city of Bowie, since we are service providers, you simply must have people to deliver the service. And so the toughest thing we do is to recruit for these people in an environment where there's less than a 3% unemployment rate. And of course, and the other thing that we have to do, a tough thing to do, is retain. Because with the younger people between 20 and 30, they have a tendency to move around a lot more than maybe boomers and other people did. So we have to, part of our job in HR is to retain and keep the good people from going elsewhere, because it's sort of a cultural thing with young people. And so we have to retain them and keep the good ones. And of course, get them. I mean, often we have people who don't show up for interviews because they have so many other opportunities. And maybe if you're in the hiring business, you know what I'm talking about. So our HR department is really busy, but it helps the day go fast. Any questions related to the HR division?
Do we have any questions?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Oh,
Just one quick thing.
Councilman Estia.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Haley, can you just, since you're here and we don't get the chance to talk to you very often as a group, Can you just outline for us and for the benefit of whoever might be watching at home, kind of the challenges that we're having right now in workforce recruitment? I think if people watch the news, they often come away more confused about the state of employment right now, depending on who they talk to. And I think it would just be helpful to hear from somebody who's helped hire 400 public employees who do some pretty essential and critical jobs, kind of your quick perspective on the landscape right now as you see it.
Certainly, and good evening. As Mr. Lott kind of outlined, it's sort of a double-edged sword in that it is certainly a good thing economically that the unemployment rate is as low as it is. For that does create some challenges for us in human resources because, again, we're competing with not only other municipalities, but private sector, the federal government, and so forth. So what we have been able to do, coming out of the pandemic, we faced an extreme challenge in trying to find people. But we have been able to adjust some of our longstanding practices to attract people. We do find that younger employees, they have a different value system than some of us who have been around a little bit longer. Salaries obviously are important to everybody, but there is also a work-life balance. And so the implementation of flexible scheduling, certainly our telework policy, one of the things that in our objectives we tend to have every year are trying to find ways to incorporate wellness. And we have found, again, as we've moved further and further away from the pandemic and implemented more of these programs, that it has been effective. So, and I would imagine that we are not much different than anybody else in that regard.
Along those lines, Mr. Haley, what are the areas where we consistently struggle the hardest to find workers? Because if you listen to folks, they'll tell you that tech is the future, everyone needs to be going into STEM and tech, but I often hear that's not quite the case right now among hiring managers, that those jobs are easier to fill than some might expect.
Yeah, again, you know, and I am pleased to say 2 years ago we were really struggling for a lot of positions. Right now, no. Tech is not something that we really have issue with. To be perfectly honest, if I had to identify an area that's the most difficult, it is some of our labor-oriented positions. And part of it is there are just so many opportunities out there. But even with that said, as I've said, we have really recovered to the point where we are not majorly struggling in that area. But again, if I were to identify a specific space, it would probably be that class of employee.
And what is the current cost of living adjustment for a union-protected, say, police officer right now? What is their year-to-year cost of living adjustment, roughly?
So their cost of living adjustment is 2% every year,
So
for police specifically.
So police, laborers, trash collectors, kind of all of our blue-collar jobs, those are the areas, mechanics, repairmen, those are the areas where we're struggling to hire and where there are definitely jobs in abundance available. Am I accurate there?
In police, yes, there is a challenge in recruiting police officers. We there have adopted some hiring bonuses, and we just recently completed our negotiation with the Fraternal Order of Police. And so again, their cost of living increase will be 2%. Yeah, so that's where we are.
Wonderful. So just so folks at home understand, if you're concerned about a lack of quality police officers out there, one thing you could do right now that would be really helpful is if your kid ever expresses an interest in a career in law enforcement or the judicial system, do not dissuade them from that path. There is a massive overlap between people who worry a lot about crime and people who tell their own loved ones to not go into the policing profession. And if some of those same people would encourage their kids to go into those jobs, we wouldn't have so many trouble hiring good local police officers who care about their communities. Anyway, just want an opportunity to get that PSA in. Thank you.
Completely agree. Thank you.
Councilman Brady.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. I imagine I know the answer already, but I take it we do salary surveys to make sure we are being competitive in the market with regards to many, not all, but many of our employees?
Yes, we do a citywide salary survey approximately every 4 to 5 years. We
was
just
my
did
next
one
question.
in 22, so.
Okay, and that's a good, 4 to 5 is a good year
Yep.
period to cover. Thank you, Mayor.
I think to add along those lines, we'll probably want to look at potentially down the road, even bringing in an outside compensation firm to actually do a review for us to make sure that we are meeting not only locally, but because we're trying to attract people from throughout the entire region, that we may want to look at doing that down the road.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I will say that when we do the, as I say, the 4 to 5 year study, we do bring in an external firm that specializes in that, and so
That's good.
they
Yeah.
do that for us.
So that's good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? Anyone?
Just one.
Yes, go right ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. I think I might know the answer, but Mr. Haley, good to see you. Question is, for learning and development, is that each department's, like, is our approach that each department head sets the objectives for learning and development for their department, or is that an organized kind of effort from human resources?
A little of both. It's primarily each department sets that effort. They know exactly what kind of skills they want and need. And certainly, in any way that we can support that, we do in human resources. We'll work with each department to achieve those objectives.
Okay, one suggestion that I would add to my colleagues, Prince George's County is doing this, and actually they have a summit that is coming up for government employees on technology and artificial intelligence so that their workforce could get trained on probably some of the productivity and efficiency tools that could essentially be leveraged in their everyday, day-to-day work for some of the more administrative staff members. Their summit is actually coming up, I think, on May 16th or 17th. I'm actually speaking on AI and workforce. So I think it might be helpful for us to figure out kind of how we possibly look at if it's helpful for us to adopt the same methodology to train our staff perhaps in learning and development objectives around technology and some of these emerging technologies, productivity and efficiency tools that are coming out so that we can continue to empower the workforce that we have with this AI shift that potentially does pose the threat to displace some of the administrative staff. So that's one suggestion that I would offer to my colleagues as an objective that I would recommend that we start looking into, given Prince George's County is already moving in that direction as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilwoman Rogers.
Councilwoman, can you clarify what that objective would be? I heard AI. Are you looking
Yes.
at more technology-based training or training opportunities? Or I'm just trying to get it clarified
Yes.
in my mind.
Of course, Councilwoman Rogers, that's a good question. So basically what I'm looking at is kind of introductory to our workforce on artificial intelligence and how it can be leveraged within the workplace. So whether that is, beginner classes for AI, just really understanding its landscape, because essentially the way that I think it does pose the biggest threat on our side as a city government in this immediate context of what we're talking about during this budget hearing for this session right now is efficiency and productivity. So it does obviously, like when you think about calendaring, scheduling, some of those like general administrative tasks that are usually completed by a human, that's the pretty much first line of attack. So for me, it's looking at what are those kind of introductory courses that we can help empower our workforce to start taking to understand how AI might apply to their daily jobs. And I think for me, if I'm offering a suggestion here, it's productivity and efficiency, that they can begin to just have an understanding of what it is, where it might be applicable so that they can be freed up to kind of enhance their skills on whether that's critical thinking, leadership, communications, or whatever that is that for our staff. I'm not in the day-to-day to it, so I may not know the specifics, but that's my suggestion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but we're going to have to move on. Go ahead, please, Councilwoman.
Because I think what I'm hearing makes a lot of sense. what I see is only one objective for fiscal year 2025, and that's around conducting, oh, wait a minute, this is the wrong, hold on. Let me go to HR. Okay, I see the new employee performance evaluation. I see the wellness-related events, and I see the open enrollment and employee benefit management processes. So I guess the thing is, which is something to think about, is, and you're probably doing this, I just don't know, so you can respond, on what do you do to ensure that your workplace has the latest skills that are in the marketplace around technology and things of that sort. I think that's where I'm going. And is that an objective, or is that embedded in your daily operations and your programs?
This is really embedded in our operations
Okay.
already. I mean, in terms of speaking about artificial intelligence, we do utilize that in some capacity in terms of our operations today. I know individual staff members that use that to assist them in their work. Our communication staff specifically have been using that and integrating that into their development of content from that standpoint. To a large degree, the city employees, the type of work that they do and they carry out on a day-to-day basis, this is not applicable to them in terms of their functionality, because they are field personnel, they're working out in the community. We're not at a place for that for most folks. Overall, we integrate adoption of technology into the training for our employees. We have, you will see throughout our budget, we have ongoing training and professional development for our staff. We do that regularly, and this takes many forms. As Mr. Haley had mentioned, each of our departments take a look at what their needs are in terms of training and updating their staff, and they do that, and they make sure that they have those resources. It is because of the diversity of the work that we have in municipal government. We're not an accounting firm where we have a whole bunch of accountants. We have a wide variety of employees, so it takes a very diverse set of training for folks, and it takes a lot of focus on each of the departments to make sure that they do that. It has been widely supported in the city of Bowie to have that ongoing training for our employees. It is strongly supported by the city manager and all of our department heads, so we do that on a regular basis.
All right, thank you for your response. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll turn it back over to City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll move to page 56, which is titled Elections. This activity provides administrative, secretarial, and clerical services to the city elections, voter registrations, records keeping, furnishes voting and registration information to Bowie residents and other governmental bodies and agencies. The objectives of this activity are to encourage all eligible residents of the city of Bowie to register and vote in all elections, provide adequate information to residents, and continually improve and update the city's voting regulations and records. The objective for 2024 was to administer the city election on November 7, 2023. That was conducted, and it's 100% complete. Objectives for 2025, work with the city attorney reviewing and updating the city's election laws and charter and code. Number 2 is work with the County Board of Elections on updating city street lists and registering voters as homes are built in Melford and South Lake development. There are no significant budget changes there and no activity, election activity in this fiscal year. Commodities is budget small, $1,000. Any questions about elections?
Any questions? Councilmember Brady?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of items, and I don't know whether it should be an objective or just task staff with looking at it, but I'll start off with a question. Was there a critique after the election to sit down and look at how it was run, any problems that you've had, any better ways to do it, if you will? Was that done and documented anywhere, or is that yet to be done?
The Board of Elections met afterwards, and we had a wrap-up meeting. There were comments made of certain items to be addressed and looked into for future elections, which is where stemmed also the updating as the objective for next year of updating the election laws in the city code and charter, because there are still a lot of discrepancies in it in certain areas that we found during this election. So the board had commented that that is something that they would like to see addressed. A couple of them had to do with reporting and the electioneering and things like that, and some complaints that we did receive from some of the voters that, I don't want to say, felt harassed by some of the campaign workers as they approached the polling places.
Yeah, and I would share those those concerns, and where I was going with this was there were obvious things that went on in the lead up and on election day. There was a problem with the fact, and this is my first time, this is my 13th campaign in a row, and it's the first that I recall that you didn't have a well-defined electioneering boundary this year, whereas 4 years ago and previously they seemed to be well, or at least better. And that caused some problems, some confusion. We had issues where there were some locally printed literature, there was modifications of an authorized literature by a candidate. There was an issue with text messages coming from Northern Virginia. So, I mean, there were things that were troubling and disturbing. So I was just wondering if there was a kind of a documented assessment of what went on and better practices, if we can. And if there was a document, could you share it with the council?
Sure. So as far as I could remember, we did not get any complaints in regards to what you just mentioned about text messages from Northern Virginia or any campaign literature.
Okay.
It is not, then that's probably something that we could address when we review this with the attorney and start working on it.
Right.
On making it a request that we, every candidate provides a copy of the literatures that they're using, just so that we make sure. There's nothing in there right now stating that a candidate has to submit proof of what they're putting out there. A lot of it, we get it because there are registered city residents, so they might get it in the mail, but they might not get everybody's
Right.
literature if they're not in, let's say, they live in District 2, well, they won't get anything from District 1 or anything like that. But that is something that I could make a note and make sure that we address it.
The machines that we use for our elections, do we own them?
No, we do not. We rent them.
And do the machines generate a paper copy? Where I'm going with this is, if you remember the last election with Smartmatic and with Dominion, you had the OpScan, the county used that in the last state election, where you had the OpScan where you the voter filled out and you scanned it in, and they collected all those papers. And if there was a dispute, they just pulled out the stack of papers and could hand verify the votes. Does the equipment we have or we use, does that have that capability, or is that something that we need to change?
So we do use the optical scanners, but that is only used for absentee ballots, which is the only paper ballots that we have. Once we receive those ballots back in the mail, they're opened the night of election by the board, and they're scanned with the one scanner. In each polling place, all we have is just the electronic voting machines.
Right.
And there is not a paper trail like a paper ballot. There's just a receipt that they get when they check in, which is given to the poll worker that's working at the machine, and then they do their selections. But there is not, at the end of the night when they tally, it just totals up all the votes, and it'll show if there was any missed
So I won't add it as an
votes.
objective or ask my colleagues to add it as an objective, but I think we ought to look at the type of machines and go to that OpScan for the whole election, so we have that paper trail for the immediate time after the election that's appropriate for someone to challenge, so we don't get into any problems that nationally we've seen.
So from what I'm understanding is you're going to suggest to just go straight to just paper ballots with the OptiScan and not the electronic machines?
Not the electronic, yes, but
Okay.
I'm not going to make it an objective this year, but I'm going to encourage that staff look at that and have the election board look at that. The one thing I would like, and this isn't just elections, it's probably several different departments, but it has to do with e-filing. I would like to see the ability to submit treasurer's reports electronically, to submit financial disclosure forms electronically, any building permits or anything like that to be done electronically. You know, the federal government, the state government, and I believe the county has moved in that direction. I think we need to look at that as a possibility. So I'd like to put that on the table for a possibility.
That is part of the list of what the board had for
Okay.
updating in the laws.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, back over to you, City Manager.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next point will be our Legal Services Division. This office provides legal services to and advice to the City Council and the City Manager and staff. The City Attorney attends council meetings, represents the city in legal proceedings, both before courts and administrative agencies, reviews contracts, leases, covenants, and prepares ordinances and resolutions. The office also provides advice to the city and on city and state legislative issues, and the city retains several law firms also with differing specialties to handle things such as bond issues, tax issues, contract negotiations, and more. The budget for this is $207,500, and we believe that we'll be on course for that, and we'll operate within that, even though we did get a little close this year, but next fiscal year it should be better. This professional services includes legal services for Ethics Commission, Board of Appeals, telecommunications legislation, and cable franchise renewals. Any questions regarding the legal component of our budget?
Councilmember Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to very briefly commend our city attorney for her fantastic work. Ms. Levan and I have not always seen eye to eye, so I'm not saying this out of any sense of personal obligation, but our attorney has been genuinely phenomenal. Not only has played excellent defense for us legally and at times politically as well when needed, but has played really excellent offense. And in some of the suits where we've been on the cutting edge, she has more than covered her salary many times over with some of the money that she has been able to bring back to the city by keeping a very close eye to what's going on in the legal landscape in the state and nationally. And so I just want to commend her for her tremendous work and thank her and her team for their continued support.
Any other questions? Hearing none, back to you, City Manager.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next would be page 58, which is our communications. As some of you may know, when I arrived here 7.5 years ago, we had a one-person operation, and that's the person sitting next to me. We've expanded a bit over the last few years, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. This division is responsible for providing residents with current information on city events, services, policies through monthly newsletters, press releases, the city's website, social media, and cable television. It also provides the city council meetings and special events. For 2024, number A there, objective, was to better measure and evaluate the success of our outreach efforts. Beginning in September 2023, division produced a monthly report that tracked engagement metrics for various platforms used to disseminate information to the public. This objective was completed. The monthly engagement metrics reported are helping refine the outreach efforts and identify areas of needed improvement. The data also used to determine layout and menu changes for our new website. Be there. By September 2023, develop a new marketing campaign for Alert Bowie with the goal of increasing registration in all Bowie neighborhoods by at least 5% by the end of FY 2024. This objective was completed due to outreach efforts. Total registration increased 6% in the first half of 2024. Emphasis is now on improving registration rates in neighborhoods where low registration rates are through targeted advertising, attending in-person events, and enlisting the help of the HOA leadership when possible. C, by December the 31st of 2023, the division worked with the HR office to expand and enhance the city's presence on LinkedIn to aid with recruitment and to increase visibility as a desirable employee. Changes are being made to the appearance and content of the city's LinkedIn page to tie it more closely to the Bowie brand, showcase employee team building and wellness initiatives, and help market the city for potential job applicants. Number D, by June 30, 2024, produce 7 videos, 1 per department, to educate the public about some aspects of the department's work and integrate videos into the city's website. This was completed, and the 7th will be completed by the end of June. Our objectives for 2025 are, by February of next year, implement closed captioning for the city's council videos and other videos produced by the city. By September 30, 2024, develop new materials and strategies for educating and engaging new residents in South Lake and other new city neighborhoods. Complete the transition from .org to .gov domain for the city's website and city's emails. Conduct monthly training sessions for department staff that will strengthen their outreach efforts, which will include classes on website updating, search engine optimizing, creating winning graphics, and writing engaging copy for newsletters. The significant budget changes are the reclassification of 2 communications analyst 1 positions from X112 to grade 113 at a cost of $15,365. Communication analyst 1 requests to be paid $500 and that for language, I believe that's the language issue. Yeah. Right. For foreign language proficiency. Also replacing television cameras and related equipment in the city studio. Looking at the workforce, like I said, in November of 16, it was one solo person in communications. Now we have 6.6, and we have every aspect of communication covered with specialists. Our biggest challenge now is retaining people and keeping the federal government from picking off our outstanding employees and others. The salary ranges, wages at $556,100, fringe benefits $197,600. We have a $10,000 subscription for software, and we have some money for photography, audiovisual consultant, and paid print advertising, $15,000, $20,000 for 52005, and include the supplies and equipment for the division, including studio and other video productions. Finally, in capital outlay, including video equipment and video production of the city government outreach and public access channel. Funding of these items is through a grant from the city's 2 cable providers, and the equipment necessary included television, cameras, tripods, camera control units, equipment for video productions, the van, and computers and battery backup units. And that's $215,700. What questions do we have regarding the communications division?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question on the objective for .org to .gov. I think that's been hanging out there for a little while. What have the challenges been, and what do we think we're going to be able to, or what are we doing to overcome and bring this home this fiscal year?
Yes, you are correct. It has been. You've heard me talk about it
Yes.
before. Challenges partly have been staffing, and we also had to get through branding and then the website redesign. So both of those have happened in the last year and a half. So it is next up on the list for a major project to do. The challenge is, in terms of doing it, is it's so far-reaching. Everything that has a URL on it is going to need to change. Now, there will be some overlap, so if you type in .org, it will take you to a .gov. But just think about it. Every single business card, every single document that the city produces will need to be changed. So it's just making sure, just like Fred Robinson Way, making sure that everywhere that information is provided now, that we have planned and make the change to it for the future.
Yeah. I think from a technology standpoint, I mean, we can still maintain ownership of both, so we just do a redirect for the website. So, you know, I think it'd be great to move this along, and looking forward to seeing it come to fruition.
I'm actually going to be meeting with the
Excellent.
IT folks about it next week.
Oh, very good. Look at you, getting started early. Thank you.
Councilman Brady.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to dovetail on that last comment, it's a monumental problem to deal with, especially just a small part called email, because there are so many people out there that have an email address according to the current structure, and many of those may or may not be aware of the changeover. So if they send it to what they think is a good email, I'm assuming it'll be an alias that'll get connected to it. So from that aspect, it shouldn't be a problem, but it's just a nightmare. I do have a question that's kind of tied to the next item also. The capital outlay increase is $208,000. That's much. I imagine much of it has to do with the television related equipment that we're talking about, the upgrades and all. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be correct. With the start of the pandemic, there was, as you know, supply chain shortages in a variety of industries. One of the hardest hit was audiovisual. So for the council chambers example project, it took us 18 months to get all the pieces of equipment here in order to complete that project. So we have we've had cameras in the budget for several years. We did not in FY24, but that is the substantial part of it. The big TV studio cameras, those are like around $40,000 each, and you need to get what's called a camera control unit and the tripods that go with them. So it's a substantial outlay, but what we have found is technology is changing constantly, but what you need to do is buy them all at the same time.
Right.
So that you start a new baseline and everything is compatible at that point.
Okay. I appreciate that, and that's a lot more detail than I'd expected, but
Okay, sorry.
but you lived up to your reputation of being a detailed person. The reason I ask that, because there's a reference to the fact that this is items that are funded through grant from the two cable providers, and I also see in the next section, business operations, that we're still renegotiating the refranchise agreement. Is there any possibility that this may be delayed until that is completed, or is the funds available through the current contract?
Yeah, we'll get our money through the current contract.
Okay, so this is funded through the current contract.
Any cable money that we get is still coming. We just got to get the new franchise agreement.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Councilwoman Rogers.
Thank you. One of the biggest challenges in any type of organization is communications and being able to do it effectively. And I think Una is just absolutely awesome in what she does. So, question about the September 30th objective, developing new materials and strategies for educating and engaging new residents. I was wondering whether or not you had thought about using this as a pilot, sort of, to see what kind of engagement and feedback you get, so that maybe it can be duplicated for the rest of the city, because no matter where I go or how many people I talk to, they never know stuff. You know, I had to tell people a couple nights ago when we had city council meetings. So I think that if we're able to engage this new community, then maybe, you know, we can get some gems out of that to help with the rest of the city. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, there's some unique needs when people have no idea that our city exists. But yes, trash, a lot of other things are basic services that will apply all across the city and not just in these new neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, we'll turn it back over to you, City Manager.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Communications. So the next division is the division I mentioned earlier, Business Operation Division, which is tasked with managing crucial and high-profile administrative functions that involve negotiating and monitoring the city cable franchise agreements, telecommunications agreements, and annexation agreements. Additionally, the division oversees the city's utilities and energy efficiency projects and plays a key role in negotiating and monitoring procurement contracts with different organizations. The division also provides security services for the city's facilities, including City Hall main front desk, and serves as a liaison with various federal, state, and county agencies and departments, as well as the Maryland utility companies and the state of Maryland State Highway Division as it relates to our residents. Furthermore, it provides centralized support for all city offices, covering areas such as office supplies, printing and graphics, and mail services. Objectives for 2024, they were to continue to upgrading and expanding the city's fiber optic redundancy network infrastructure to our city facilities. The first phase of construction of fiber should be ready by the fall of 2023. The city's optic redundancy network infrastructure projects, initial construction phase is delayed until the negotiation of the franchise agreement is executed. Currently, unless other issues are presented, the negotiations have been completed and Comcast has signed an agreement with the county, but they have not so far signed any agreements with any municipalities in the county. And so we believe that's pending and that's coming soon. For some reason, they're reading it, taking more time. But we've been negotiating this contract for 7 years or so since I've been here. But we thought we were there and we're waiting on Comcast to ratify the agreement with us. So, B there, in coordination with the city's power purchase agreement partner, business operation works with on the stage 2 solar array project. This project will be expanding the solar array system from a 2.5 megawatts to a 5.0 megawatt system by the summer of 2024. Along with the power purchasing agreement partner, the completion date for this fiscal year will not be met. Factors including permit delays and addressing interconnection with utility prompt the schedule to now anticipate a successful culmination in the fall of 2024. We believe, however, the permitting issue will be coming to a close within a matter of months. But permitting is as you know, a significant challenge within this county, but we're trying to fight through that. Glancing at the performance indicators, you can see we project more complaints from our residents. We help our residents work sorting out issues with every agency that operates in the city. For example, we've had a resident who had a gas leak on his property. He called Washington Gas. They weren't as responsive as he thought they should be. He contacted us, we contact Washington Gas and help resolve the problem. We do that all the time. And when I arrived here, we had modified the Assistant 2 position that existed before and established a business operations division, John Fitzwater, the previous Assistant City Manager, to deal with the complaints and the requests for assistance that we get from residents as they deal with these agencies, which is a little unique for us, but we're staffed to handle that. And we know somebody everywhere. Now, of course, we don't control State Highway Administration, but we know the District 3 engineer, and we have a good relationship, and he listens to us. And the same with BG&E, Washington Gas, Pepco, and all of the county agencies. So even DPI, believe it. So the objective for 2025, the Operation Division will continue to work on enhancing and expanding the fiber redundancy, and we're trying to get that construction of that project done in June of 2025. In coordination with the city's power purchase agreement, they continue to work on that Stage 2 solar array project, which is we want to have at the Ensign property, correct? And transition from a 2.5 to a 5.0 megawatt system. And we are, number 3 there, Business Operation Division is working with emergency management and community services to incorporate security into our building functions. And we want to come up with something that makes it safer but doesn't prohibit our residents from coming in the building. Any questions about, no significant budget change, excuse me, and flipping to page 64, salary and wages at $333,700, $96,700 for the fringe benefits. We're spending $104,600 on materials and supplies, both in 52005 and $130,000 in 55055. These are materials and supplies for the entire city, not just one division, for which we control in that division. And of course, we have subscriptions for NATOA and telecommunications organizations. And the capital outlay from the INET is $150, and that's also cable franchise money. Any questions about the business operations division?
Seeing no questions. Councilmember Truesdale.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick question. On objective B with the megawatts solar array from 2.5 to 5%, what is the average standard megawatts for on the solar arrays?
Good evening. So that varies. The county, for example, has solar arrays that have 10 megawatts. There are some of the big boys that actually do 30 megawatts, which is huge. I mean, we're talking about very enormous facilities. Until recently, you could only have 2.5, but due to some changes that were made in legislation, we were able to increase it to 5. Well, actually, it took away the ceiling, basically.
Okay, right. Mm-hmm. That's to my next question. How often does that change, and how often?
It just depends on who's doing whose solar farm or whose arrays they are, right? There are companies that own their own arrays. It just depends on who's doing it and how much they need in terms of energy.
If I may add, the power that is anticipated to be generated at this solar farm, when it was designed, it was anticipated that this would replace about 2/3 to 3/4 of the power used by the city of Bowie. So this is going to, once complete, essentially have a renewable energy source for a significant majority of our city's electrical demands. This is not our residents, this is for the city's operations for its buildings and facilities.
Thank you.
Seeing no other question, oh, we do not. Councilman Steve.
A deep sigh from the dais. I just want to say a big thank you to Maddie. I love telling folks that Ms. Bizzuto used to be a local advocate for the environment and good government initiatives and got so good at beating down our doors at City Hall, getting the stuff done, that we decided to put her on payroll, and now she goes and beats down everyone else's door on our behalf. And I really have to say, Ms. Bizzuto, if other government agencies had staff with a fraction of your energy and persistence, people would have so much less to complain about in government. And like Ms. Cooper and like so many of the wonderful staff we've heard, are also a longtime treasured resident, which we appreciate. And so I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you publicly for your work. We ask you to do a lot, often the impossible, and yet so often you still manage to deliver, which is a big mistake on your part because we keep asking you to do it year to year. So thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, but I do have a great staff. So it's a great team that I have.
She's gonna be unbearable right now.
Moving right along at this time, City Manager. And Maddie, again, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great, yes, and you're right, Ms. Estep. She is an outstanding manager and director. City Clerk Department. So, City Clerk's office provides, that's page 66, provides support services and assistance to the City Council and the City Manager. This office, in conjunction with the Board of Elections, is responsible for and makes arrangements for the conduct, administration, preparation, and operations of the city elections, as well as the update and maintenance of the voter registration roll. Additionally, the office maintains and updates the city code, makes arrangements and preparation for the city council meetings, including setting up their council agenda, taking notes, and transcribing the minutes. City Clerk Office maintains the official records and documents of the city, answers inquiries from outside agencies, FOIA-type inquiries, and government bodies on behalf of the city. The office also arranges interviews for committee applicants and for city council, prepares and maintains the city council agendas, hearing date schedules, the city committee rosters, as well as the financial disclosure/conflict of interest data. The city clerk's office is responsible for countersigning official city documents, maintaining the city seal, setting up meetings for the city council, assisting city staff in researching projects, as well as gathering material for the council's package and performing other related tasks as needed. Just as a matter of history, 4 years ago, you got your assistant, correct? 4.
Yes.
So, believe it or not, this was all being done by one person, and before we had Carolyn went off to greater things, and now we have Mary Kate. So, looking at our objectives here for 2024, A is to coordinate with City Council and City Manager, provide orientation sessions for elections, and that objective was complete, and we talked about it earlier, I think, with the election issue. B there, update routes, rules, and procedures for the City Council, and present to the Council for adoption. She's already done that. I think she submitted those to the City Council, and she's waiting on a response. C, transfer permanent records to the Maryland State Archives for permanent retention in accordance with the approved records retention schedules by June 30, 2024. This objective is 90% complete. Records are in the process of being transferred and should be done by the end of the fiscal year. Update templates for proclamations, resolutions, and ordinances, and create a new template for status report items by October 2023, and the clerk and her team were able to get that done. Objectives for 2025, update procedures for Board of Personnel Appeals and present to the Council for adoption by January 31st, 2025. Incorporate and use the board portal for Civic Clerk, which is an automation system that helps us with the status report and helps us be more efficient. Incorporate the use of the board portal for City Clerk for council access and meeting agenda files. Significant budget changes to reclassify the city clerk position from 117 to 119, which from a fairness perspective lines this position up with similar superintendent-like positions. So we have the city clerk and the assistant city clerk and 2 full-time FTEs, salary wages $191,500, fringe of $59,000. We have $16,400 for attendance to Maryland Municipal Clerks Association, International Municipal Clerks Conferences, and other training and conferences that include training opportunities to make our clerk team more efficient. Any questions regarding the city clerk's budget?
Seeing none, we'll turn it back over to you, City Manager. Continue. Michael.
Okay.
Owilda, on behalf of all of us, most of us couldn't get out of bed and dressed correctly in the morning if we didn't have you taking care of us, thinking about our needs. Couldn't let the opportunity go without saying thank you for everything you do. Seriously, you make us look much better than we deserve.
Thank you. You guys are a great team. Sometimes.
Thank you, Will.
Moving right along, City Manager. Owilda, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Give us a minute to change our musical chairs here. We'll be right with you. And the next will be page 69, which is the vaunted Economic Development Division. All right.
City Manager, I'd like to apologize to my council member that his microphone has had some technical difficulties, and I don't think he can speak anymore. Go ahead, City Manager.
Okay. All right, so, economic development. The mission for Economic Development Office is to increase the employment and non-residential tax base of the city through business retention, expansion and attraction of tourism promotion, community development, redevelopment, and revitalization, and other business technical assistance. This office serves as a liaison to the business community and to the city's Economic Development Committee, and supports local delivery of business assistance programs to various Chamber of Commerce, regional economic development entities, state offices and departments, and other agencies for economic and community development matters. This office is responsible for the implementation of the economic development strategies adopted by the council. In the retreat there, I asked a question about the mission, and so it's pretty clear. And when if anybody's got any adjustments to that, we're certainly willing to make changements and adjust. I want to make sure that people, that residents don't, this is not a land use issue. This is our ability to increase the employment, increase the tax base by attracting business and retaining businesses. 2 years ago, I believe, the council added, of course, this was a one-person job also for many years, and we added an FTE specifically to help us with the retention of businesses in Bowie. Looking at the objective for 2024, establish a revitalization program for Old Town Bowie to coordinate and support multiple government and community efforts across departmental staff will continue to provide technical assistance and support to citizen groups to establish an arts and entertainment district. This is an ongoing project. The consultant prepared a 5-year strategy and a plan and was received in September 2023. The EDC discussed the plan, and on January 22nd, staff held a community meeting in Old Town to discuss the plan with the residents. Additional implementation may occur after January 2024, so this is an ongoing objective that is currently on target. B, continue the business retention program by increasing promotion of existing tools and programs, i.e. small business training, assistance services, and city-backed loans. Also, this is another ongoing project that is on target, and For example, staff verified top employees, 100 or more employees, and almost top employees, 79, 99 employees. Staff updated the restaurant guide. The business retention specialist created a business survey and is working with the vendors. Size up for distribution and data collection regarding business retention. So if we go to page 70, continue diversity and to expand Bowie's economic base by supporting business attraction. These efforts will support business attraction for office and flex properties at existing commercial locations. There's a locate Bowie advertising placed in selected business publications to remind businesses about Bowie as a place to work, a place to put their business. We also have been able to retain Inovaline, for which we have an arrangement for an incentive payment of $100,000. And staff continues to assist commercial office brokers and landlords with their efforts to convert interested properties in Bowie into Bowie building tenants. The prospect activity has remained low, but their efforts still ongoing. Continual efforts for retail tenant attraction and retention. Of course, the city continues to work with other retail owners and brokers to attract tenants to vacant retail and to assist the efforts to revitalize our retail. I think our vacancy rate is generally low, and Mr. King has an exact number. I think it's our vacancy rate is less than 10%, or between 10 and 15%. The retail-specific location advertising was placed nationally in the shopping center business magazine. This advertising program identifies Bowie as a desirable and profitable retail location. Staff attended the ICSC Mid-Atlantic session in September last year to promote Bowie retail locations and support our existing shopping centers and their tenants. Staff coordinated a retail roundtable in September 2023 for council to interact with retail center owners, and I attended that. That seemed to be a really valuable event. There continue to provide city oversight and coordination for small business growth and assistance programs. City provides oversight for the Bowie BIC Innovation Center, which is an outstanding organization, and continues small business service providers resources, including training and counseling. Staff also provided oversight to Bowie BIC Innovation Center, and we have a member of our staff, Mr. Buggs, is on the board, and Mr. King is an ex officio observer. The city continues to receive small business assistance and counseling services from the Maryland Apex, formerly Procurement Technical Assistance Program, and the Capital Region Small Business Development Center, BDC, and the Maryland's Women's Business Center, MWBC. F, continue the effort to continue to support the city's Economic Development Committee. We provide staff liaisons, set up the meetings, and facilitates their operation. There's been a minimal increase in retail space from 3,223 to 3,500, we project. Otherwise, most of the numbers in the performance indicator, except flex vacancy rates, that's gone down from 16.4 to 13.6, and the other numbers are pretty even. The objectives for 2025 are continued from those objectives from 2024. There are no significant budget increases associated with this. We have full-time equivalents, 2.4, one economic development director, one business retention specialist, and an economic development intern that helps out significantly. We have salary and wages at $265,300, $96,900 for fringe benefits. We contractual services is $155,000 related to business attraction and expansion and retention. Professional services include funding to implement and adopt economic development strategy, service fees for maintenance and operation of the city's revolving loan program. Also includes hosting of brokers or prospect events, advertising, graphic design agency support services, includes support for business retention and attractive events. We have subscriptions, $55,700 to related subscriptions, and a meager $19,000 in travel and training. On page 73, there is a $487,000 municipal grant line to support the efforts in the Old Town Bowie and to fund the city's contribution to the Bowie Innovation Center, Bowie Business Innovation Center, Bowie BIC, a Small Business Development Center, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, the Maryland Women's Business Center, and support grants to the state and county nonprofits supporting the city's economic development efforts. And also, in Olan's incentive is wrapped up in there too. Any questions for Mr. King regarding economic development?
City Manager, what I'd like to pose is that as we're trying to enhance our reach not only to the citizens but to the immediate area, I would really like to look at us having a Bowie restaurant weekend, one in which that we will come together as a city, help to promote opportunities for restaurants here in the city to maybe have discount rates to be able to do it, and we've seen these in other areas. But to really promote the restaurants here in the city and to gather and be able to do that. So I would really like to see what it would take for us to do that. And I would really like to see something like that generated from us. Again, to where we highlight all of the restaurants within the city and an opportunity to generate, really to get people out, because we do have some restaurants here that we sometimes refer to as hidden gems, but we don't need to have any more hidden gems. And I think throughout the city we can do that and try to create the opportunity here for people to eat out here within the city itself.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. King is familiar with the concept that you're presenting, so is our finance director. So is that something that the council wants us to try to do in fiscal year 2025?
Yeah, I would like to see that. I'd like to put that to council. I think it's something we could move forward with. I think it can enhance who we are and the reputation of our restaurants and our businesses in the area. So I think that's a go ahead. I think we have a general agreement on the council.
Just in the interest of exactness, so when does the council perceive or want us to try to pull this off?
I'd like
summer,
to pull it
spring,
off
fall,
for the
what?
next fiscal year.
Yeah, but
Preferably, probably when we get to the spring of next year. I think it gives us a little more time to plan and put this in place. I'm not sure that it's best to try and do it in the winter or in the fall because, of dining. And I think the city of Bowie has a lot to offer, particularly for the outdoor dining. We've invested in our businesses being able to have the opportunity for people to eat outdoors and doing that. We've supported that. So let's see if we can take advantage of that as well. But I'm also open to any suggestions that anyone else may have. But I think that's something for us to move forward, and I think it'd be something that would be very positive for us as a city.
So then,
Please, Mayor Pro Tem?
I would suggest perhaps an outreach effort to a number of the restaurants locally to see what works best for them in terms of time of year, do kind of a, like Washington does and so many other places, Restaurant Week. I'm not sure what works for them in terms of scheduling. If it helps them on a low time, then maybe even though it's not ideal, but maybe it's more beneficial to them, they may be more incentivized to provide a fixed price meal at a discount versus some other, some other time of year, so.
I think we're all, Councilwoman Ndabamadu, she has her hand up, and then I'll come to you. Great idea.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to go last. Sorry. Just please come back to me. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councilman Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Henry King, thank you for being here tonight, and I appreciate your many efforts, especially the progress we made in the last year related to Old Bowie, and in general, anytime I need anything at all or have any question related to business, you always have your nose to the ground and are a walking encyclopedia. And not only my experience, but when I talk to business owners as well and stakeholders, they all say the same thing about you too. So even the opposition likes you, Mr. John Henry King. Quick question, as it relates to the mini grants for a lot of the organizations that we participate in and work with, it might be helpful for us, I don't know if this is appropriate more in a closed session, to sit down as a council and review those grants. One, to bring new members up to speed on our money and where it's going, but also to just kind of discuss any changes in parameters that we might want to consider moving forward. I know that's something that several of my colleagues have brought up, just making sure that with all of these grants, we know exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and if we need to make any changes, we have the opportunity to discuss it. Does that seem reasonable to do in the next year as a possible objective?
Yes, we can certainly, if you're referencing, coming into closed session and discussing details of it, we can set that up, no problem.
Perfect.
I mean, it can be an objective or just an assignment, but we'll certainly do it after we pass the budget and schedule a meeting, and Mr. King will come in and give you all the 411 on where our grants are going, who's getting them, and what qualifies them for.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hello. Councilman Truesdale?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo my colleague, Steph, and thank Mr. Henry for your fine work and what you do. And as a small business entrepreneur, what we do in the city, it plays a big part in terms of having businesses, retaining and attracting new businesses. My comment just goes under two objectives that we discussed: retail attraction and small business assistance. As a council, I think we should definitely consider funding the Maryland Women's Business Center Incubator program within our city. It aims to accelerate and grow the small businesses and create space for entrepreneurs to connect, more entrepreneurs to connect and share public ideas. It's not a question more so than just a comment that I think that is a wonderful program organization that should definitely be recognized. And if staff have any comments.
Yeah, we're waiting. City Manager, we were actually waiting for feedback.
The councilman is referring to a request I believe all of you received from the Maryland Women's Business Center seeking additional funding. That would have been handled in the course of the normal budget preparation, but for the fact that the retail incubation idea had not yet gelled as we entered this budget cycle. So they have a request close to $140,000 there. Absent an action by you, we would be funding them at the same level we funded them this year, and that's of course a matter of public record should anybody inquire, and they are being funded at $20,000 this year. So it seems they are seeking essentially a $120,000 increase. I believe that can be done by reallocating certain monies within the budget. specifically within the Retail Incentive Fund, in which there is a request contained within this budget for funding of that again. I would suggest we return to the way we did it initially when we established the Bowie Economic Development Incentive Fund, which is we are prepared to provide incentives, but we do not budgetarily put money in it today. We wait until a specific instance arises, and then via closed session, council can make a determination as to their desire to fund an incentive to a specific business and at what amount. That means the funding would come from the unallocated funds outside of the budget process by a special action there. That would free up sufficient money to get us close to the funding request that the Maryland Women's Business Center has placed.
I'd like to ask, since they came before us several times, before the council a few times now, talking about what they're trying to accomplish and what they're trying to do, I think one of the things we could do is take a look at from what you've seen and what from council has seen, what we would think would be appropriate at this time, that we do look at that as opposed to, and what I mean by what's appropriate, follow the process you're talking about now, but make sure you have an idea of what you see as economic development, and then what we as a council see would go along with that. And again, that's something we can do as we have historically done it. But I'd like for you to make sure that you can prepare some ideas of what you see.
Okay, they have had success with this retail incubation program. They've done it in Montgomery County, they're doing it in Howard County.
Right.
And it would seem to me that retail incubation is something in line with a lot of things that council has asked for over time. How can we grow businesses?
Right.
How can we improve our retail base to get quality businesses and to fill up some of the spaces as they come available? So this represents an opportunity that, absent their having an established program, we might be considering to create on our own. So we've got an advantage with them there. Regardless of which avenue we take, it would require some funding of some point.
Right.
So this year, if you wanted to begin with that, if you wanted to move forward with them in this coming fiscal year, you would have to tell us that.
Yeah,
and we're saying we can come up with funding without having you kill something else
in the budget itself.
Within the budget.
Understanding that, but I'm saying as we move forward with doing this, we would like to get some input on what that would look like. Be it to the full funding of what they're asking, or what would be most beneficial at this point. And then we have an opportunity for us to discuss and go through that. Fine. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I would just suggest that certainly if there's something along these lines that kind of tie in with one of our strategic objectives, certainly interested in pursuing that. That having been said, I would certainly want to see the full proposal before I start budgeting money for it, and recognizing that we have monies available that could be moved around. I think that would be satisfactory. Knowing that now makes me feel comfortable that we'd be in a position to address that later on an as-needed basis at a level consistent with what we A, have, and B, think is of value in terms of what they might propose. So I'm pleased with something along those lines.
And I think to one more small thing along, we do want to make sure as we do an analysis and discuss these things that we really get a feel for what that return on the investment will look like. And so as we move forward, as we do on all of these things, we're really looking at what that return on the investment for the community, for the businesses, and for the city as a whole would be. And I know sometimes it's hard to quantify that, but we'll need to try and do the best we can with doing that. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Oh, Councilwoman Ndamamadu.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. Sorry, let me turn my camera back. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the presentation, echoing a lot of the sentiments of my colleagues with Councilmember Wolfley's point on wanting to see a full proposal, definitely in alignment with that. I think Councilmember Stev made a great suggestion on having a closed session and just going through all of the grants that we're currently providing and just doing a full kind of like analysis on what's the ROI. And I'm sure staff is doing that regularly, but I think I've raised this concern in the past that with some of these grant programs or these things that we're supporting, essentially, when I look at their participation rates, they don't necessarily always transition to businesses that are based in the city of Bowie. So it almost kind of becomes like we're operating like a philanthropic arm as opposed to investing in businesses that will have a direct impact and being based and located and providing services for the city of Bowie population. So I think that closed session would be extremely helpful. So I appreciate you, City Manager, for putting that together and following that up as next steps. Some of the things that I'd want to amplify and highlight, I love the old Bowie revitalization being mentioned. I know that when I met with staff some time ago, there were some comments around South Bowie. So let me amplify the concerns of South Bowie really quickly, because we did put together a South Bowie kind of revitalization task force. I forgot the exact name that we called it, but we did put together a committee that looked at some of the things that we could do here in South Bowie. However, there are no budget objectives within the budget at tackling some of those suggestions that South Bowie residents had raised. And I know that's not on staff, but rather as us as a council to give the directive to staff to add that. And so I'm proposing to add South Bowie's revitalization suggestions as a budget objective, or at least one or two suggestions that came out of the report that was given from the South Bowie committee to this body. So let me go down on what their suggestions are, and then we can possibly look at aligning before we pass this budget here in the next coming weeks on what could be added. Some of the suggestions that were raised that I had prepared in the slide deck were possibly looking at a permitting person. So Councilmember Stev has amplified concerns that we have with permitting. So even if we were to fund this thing for the Women Business Center, this retail incubator, it doesn't change the fact that permitting will still present a challenge for some of these smaller businesses to be able to come in the city. And so I think possibly looking at whether that's a part-time staff position or what that is, but somebody that is directly responsible for liaisoning with the county on permitting. I think that's the first thing for me. I think the second part is I want to add a budget objective for us as a city to add a tab on our website around this story. We had this company, I forgot what their name is, do this assessment and study on what makes Bowie a great place. And they conducted all these interviews with city residents on why they want to live in Bowie, what Bowie is known for. So really creating a page on our website that tells that story, that hints at our demographics, so that when these brokers are out here trying to recruit some of these retailers, that they have a page to pinpoint to say, this is the population size, these are the demographics, these are the income levels, here are some like, available brokers that you can connect to, something for them to easily and tangibly kind of pinpoint to tell the story of why Bowie. I think that's going to be important. Another last point that I'll add that was added and amplified by the South Bowie Revitalization Committee was around marketing efforts to market the city of Bowie. I think that's great that we put ads in the papers that are targeted towards direct brokers, but I think the reality is some of these establishments in which we are trying to attract. Let me give you a brief example. I had a meeting with Southlake the other day regarding a petition that was sent around with over 300 resident signatures with the disdain of the quality of retailers that Southlake has attracted. An example of that was, why can't we have Sweet Greens? Why can't we have Nando's? And so I think when we think about some of those smaller establishments, they may not always be working with brokers, and they might have their own real estate and facilities teams that's handling their expansion. And so I think possibly looking at allocating some money, small dollars, towards marketing the city and really getting out there and telling the story. So some of these retailers that don't necessarily traditionally always work with brokers, who may not be looking at the ads in the paper, can know why they should be including Bowie in their expansion plans so that some of these amenities can come to the city. So just to recap those 3 points, one is looking at a part-time liaison to DPI and permitting that would essentially probably work with us on when we do our strategic vision on structured strategic projects that we are, as a city, kind of prowessing around, that they would help kind of expedite that process and be that pinpoint person with DPI. That's number one. The number two is adding a tab on our website on economic development to be very clear about the why Bowie, the demographics, the per capita income, all of that kind of traditional data that these brokers would essentially be performing and running analysis to give the clients, just kind of streamlining that. And then the third thing is putting aside some money on marketing to really kind of get out there and tell that story of why Bowie, so that establishments who do not traditionally work with brokers can possibly catch whiff of that and include that in their expansion planning with their own internal real estate and facilities. So I'll pause there and open it up to my colleagues and staff for any comments.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions or comments at this time? No, okay, you giving me the finger.
Oh, no, I was shaking nails.
Okay. And, all right, back to you, City Manager.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor, was there going to be a response, or are we going to add it, or is that kind of like we'll look at it at the end? I'm
No,
not sure
I think they
understand
were
the
writing
follow-up.
it down that we're going to add this and we were going to
Okay.
continue with that.
Well, just a moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a moment. Well, before we add anything, Mr. Mayor, I gotta make sure I understand. So we wanted an objective to add an economic development tab. I mean, we have that data, and we're gonna put that up tomorrow and make sure that all gets posted. It may have got lost in the redesign. So prior to the redesign of the website, you could go on our website and get our data. This permit person that the council member mentioned, before I add that, I need a consensus that you want us to add that to the budget, because we're talking about at least a part-time person. So $50,000 plus fringe benefits, office space, all of that. And just as a matter of, we don't know just yet if DPI is going to cooperate with this effort too, which is something we ought to know. But I'm just speaking from the manager's perspective. Right. And so we manage our expectations. So is there a consensus to add the permits person to the budget?
My feeling at this point is because if we're adding it in, it's not something that'll be executed, because again, if we don't have buy-in from DPI or can make it work, it's all for naught.
Right.
So, but I would, and I'll look to the council again. I'm thinking it's a good thing to put in there for now, for us moving forward, to have that space and to add that at this point. I think, please go right ahead. Councilwoman Rogers?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe that let me just go back to the basic concept about South Bowie revitalization. So obviously there was a group that came together and came up with some points that they thought would help them move forward in South Bowie to become, more current, I guess, within the community. What it means, why Bowie, thinking about the marketing aspect of it, making Bowie more of a destination than just a city here in Prince George's County. I mean, the concept, that's a good concept. When we talk about the budget objective, I'm not sure what that would look like, because we haven't gone down that path yet. But as far as permitting is concerned, I think that should be kind of held to the side. And the reason why I say that is because it's not so much the city that has the issue, it's the county. And until the county, even if you dedicate it, because I did, talk to a couple people about, okay, what else could the city do to get better response from the county? And even if you created a liaison position that was constantly reaching out to the county still hasn't gotten their act together. So maybe sometime in the future, that might be something worth looking into. But right now, until Prince George's County can get DPI under control and get them to where they need to be, I think that anybody put in that job would not be effective. They just can't be because there's just too much going on. But I do like the concept of the older communities looking at revitalization. You know, looking at South Bowie. I mean, we're looking at Old Bowie and maybe, you know, South Bowie. If you have a community that's interested in coming together and doing things, I think it's worth a look at. Yeah, those are my comments.
So just to echo some of the things the mayor mentioned and Councilmember Rogers, and to Councilmember Ndibumadu's point about this, I think Councilmember Ndibumadu is absolutely right that we do have a challenge when it comes to permitting, as Councilmember Rogers and I think all of us here will agree. One thing that's been pretty consistent in the last couple of years is our county council member, Ingrid Watson, has done a really fantastic job working with us on permitting issues when they've come up. The only real challenge is just making sure that businesses know that they can contact her office, because frankly, when most people are setting up a business, there's a long list of things they've got to deal with. Top of their mind is not calling their county council person, you know, to help navigate permitting, right? They kind of take as a given that they'll get that support without having to get their politicians involved. So maybe what might be helpful to kind of close the gap here and get us to where Councilmember Ndibumadu is trying to steer this, maybe it would be helpful if staff get together with Councilmember Watson and just see what the best path forward is as far as working with her, right? To get the word out, to make sure that when if a business is struggling with permitting or is coming to the area or has reached out to Mr. Henry King or has reached out to one of us, just so we know exactly where to direct them in order that they go into the permitting process with the best chance possible. I complain about DPI a lot, but I will be the first to say, when I do talk to them, they do a pretty good job making sure that that we know that there are resources we can direct folks to early on when they start their permitting process to try and streamline things a little bit. So to recap, maybe let's just talk Councilmember Watson, see from her perspective what the best approach is, so that we can help our businesses out, as Councilmember Ndibumadu is trying to do, and as I think we're all agreed we want to do.
Well, we're certainly prepared to speak with Councilmember Watson about that. We talk to her regularly on the staff about a myriad of issues, and we'll certainly do that, because she does have more influence than any county councilman I've experienced.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just add one thing.
Yes, please, go right ahead, Councilwoman.
Mr. Mayor, have I been
Go right
recognized?
ahead, Councilwoman.
Oh, okay. I think to basically City Manager's Lots points, Councilmember Esteb's point, I think maybe the objective is possibly, and Councilmember Rogers, I think the objective is possibly just looking, because we already have this as an objective. I forgot which area we've added it in, but essentially, as we look at how the city is growing and the communities that are coming online, maybe alongside of that kind of study or kind of growth impact assessment that we're looking at, we possibly look at if a role like this would be necessary, depending on the follow-up with Councilmember Watson's office, if she finds that it is something that's going to be feasible. Because I know that I've talked to some members that are in the county government over on the Prince George's County side, and they thought the concept could be helpful. And I'm not saying that this is the answer to add more headcount. I'm not saying it is. It's just to introduce the conversation and say that could be a feasible option, like Councilmember Rogers mentioned down the line, that as the city starts to scale, that might be a role that might be helpful, but contingent on the fact that we have buy-in from DPI, like our city manager a lot said. So I think we can start with a conversation with County Councilmember Watson's office and then add that in as an objective to just kind of assess if that's something that we might need, like maybe in the future years, so that we can be prepared to make that transition when that time comes and understand what that will look like. So I think that's the first one. And then in terms of, just to clarify, on the website tab, thank you, City Manager Lott, for getting that in there and working on getting that added. I think part of what I would like to offer up as a suggestion, and what I'd like to see, is we did do that study where people did clearly articulate, and that came from the community, on why Bowie was a desirable place. And it's not necessarily to attract more residents. It's mainly for our retailers that are out there that are expanding, to really tell that story of the type of community that we have, that they would be a part of, and that they would come and grow with. And so I think maybe working with Una's office to incorporate some of those touch points on the story and the narrative that was created that went into the work that we did for our new logo would be very helpful to include on this economic development tab, as well as our, demographics and population size and all of that. And then I think on the last point, in terms of like the South Bowie Revitalization Committee, I don't necessarily know if this was I think this was prior to the newer council members coming online, but essentially under the Economic Development Committee, there was a South Bowie Revitalization kind of committee or team that was established from that, and they did conduct surveys with the South Bowie surrounding community on kind of like certain questions, and then came up with some recommendations that they thought would be helpful given the survey that they did in South Bowie. And so essentially part of it was maybe pretty much some of the traditional concerns that we've heard over the years. But I think what would help kind of bridge that gap and that delta is possibly like some marketing efforts around like why Bowie to our retailers, and like some maybe unconventional on telling the stories, whether that's like op-eds in the Washington Post, whatever that looks like. I'm not saying that's the answer, but just to get the ideas rolling to kind of paint that and say why. And then as a budget objective alongside of Old Bowie revitalization, really figuring out what is that kind of hub for South Bowie. I don't necessarily know that the study concluded that. Old Bowie, we've talked about kind of like an arts district, but for South Bowie, is that an entertainment district? Is that a sports district? I'm not sure the answer, but possibly adding in an objective to get very clear on that so that that can align with our marketing efforts if we choose to increase that and add more funding, and then that can support the storytelling on the economic development tab that we may add. So hopefully that made sense, and I'm open for any suggestions or any communications from that.
All right, any other comments or any feedback, city manager?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure I understand what was said here. Now, so we're going to talk to Councilman Watson and prior to this whole permit issue. We're going to make sure our website has all the appropriate demographics for any potential business to look into. So the third thing that was mentioned by the councilwoman is that a marketing effort. Now, that would entail, obviously, us hiring a marketing firm and sending them out to market the city at the appropriate place at the appropriate time. That would be at least a $50,000 experience, and from my understanding, if for a credible firm to market the city of Bowie. Is that something that the council wants to add to the budget? So that's my question.
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, may I add a clarification to that point just before council consideration?
Go ahead, and then Councilman Estelle.
So basically, when it comes to the marketing effort that I'm referring to, I think the concept is described accurately. But for example, when you look at some of our surrounding jurisdictions and adjacent jurisdictions, many of them have marketing budgets where they focus on telling the story of the why and painting a narrative around their area, and that helps recruit and attract certain businesses that they want in that community. So for example, if you're telling, the history of the city of Bowie and the community that's here and what's important, pretty much all of the stuff that was done in the study to come up with a new identity, then getting that out there in non-traditional ways. So whether that is op-eds, whether that's digital ads, just really kind of telling that story. And then also, like you mentioned, some of those more concerted efforts at some of these conferences that are going on a lot more frequently than we have the capacity to attend. And also, too, many of them kind of know each other. So it's also, it creates a network effect, too, quite frankly, with the marketing effort, where we can use that as a potential lever to kind of get in front of other businesses who may not have traditional brokers and may not be thinking about Bowie as top of mind because all of the United States of America is competing for the same business.
Okay, Councilman Estelle?
So, and Councilmember Ndibumadu, tell me if I'm misunderstanding. I think what the council member is simply saying is that the city went through the process of doing its economic development study. It got some feedback. There was a product from that process, right? I think what the council member is saying is just making an effort to market that product, right, in more places. Is that right, council member? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and I don't necessarily know the exact mechanism because I don't want to infringe on your expertise, but exactly marketing that product and getting out there and telling the story. And that could be Washington Post articles. I don't know what the answer is, but those are just examples, correct?
Understood. And perhaps if Councilmember Ndibumadu has a model, a working model in mind for other towns that are doing this a certain way, that's something that we could talk about as a council and see if there's something we could steal that another community might be doing. Just a thought as well.
Okay. City Council, everybody, any other comments? If not, City Manager?
So may I just
Are we
ask
there?
Mr. Mayor for clarification for Councilmember Stev? Does that essentially,
Okay,
does that mean
Go right ahead.
I was just saying, does that mean at this time, I don't necessarily know if the answer is to increase the marketing budget or if it's mainly to look at reallocating some of the efforts in how we market and reshifting to more non-traditional marketing approaches. I don't know what that answer is, but I'd like to get clarity to make sure that staff has clarity.
So, Mr. Mayor, if
Please,
I think
Councilman Steve.
I think the council member and I are on a similar wavelength here. So again, council member, tell me if I'm off base. What might be most helpful to make this operational is just to, as a council, have on our next regular meeting to sit down, actually go over the efforts that have been done so far, talk about the results of that economic development study that was conducted before our two new arrivals in the council, get everybody on council up to speed, and then with Mr. Henry King's expertise and from the many economic development summits and meetings we had last year, maybe just give us kind of a summary of the broad themes, what we need to be doing as a city, and how, as Councilmember Ndibumadu is saying, we can do a better job, telling our story and figure out before we vote on our budget whether there's anything we need to do budget-wise to help get the city out there. I see staff nodding. Does that make sense? Councilmember Ndibumadu, am I off base?
Well, we can do it.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect.
We can do that, Mr. Esteve. As a matter of fact, we can put it on the agenda in June or in July, whatever works out best. And if there is a directive to add to the advertising budget, then we can do that with a simple budget amendment, as long as you all vote for it. And so, given the recommendations out of it, your discussion.
So, Mr. Law, can I ask, do you think, or Mr. Henry King, perhaps, since you'd be kind of our point person on this, is there any way that we could have this discussion prior to our voting on the budget? My point simply being, and I think what Councilmember Ndibumadu is getting at, is if there is a budget implication, we would ideally like to be able to address that before we vote on our final budget.
No, I don't see any way that discussion could be assembled in the time frame you've got for adopting the budget.
Let me ask this then. Understanding kind of the council's thinking on this, Mr. Henry King, is there, do you anticipate a budget impact if we were to kind of give you the guidance to operationalize, or at least to market in more places, the products that have been produced over the last year as the city has undertaken more economic development study and work?
Yes, there would be a budgetary impact.
Okay. Do we have a rough idea of what that might be? Are we talking in the $100,000?
No, that would need more clarity on exactly where we're going.
Understood. Okay. Maybe what we can do then is we can talk offline, bring Councilmember Ndibumadu in, get a clearer sense of goals, and before the end of budget, maybe we can have some idea of where best we can head with this, just so we don't let the budget window close on us without talking a little bit more. Would that be acceptable to staff?
Yes, I mean, you understand that you can amend the budget anytime you want.
Okay.
And either, even the week after it's passed, you can add to it. I mean, but it's up to you, though.
Okay. We can go through the emergency ordinance process if we need.
If need be.
Understood. Thank you.
Councilmember Brady.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to weigh in on this last part of this discussion. The city manager has said we can do a supplemental appropriation if, after the fact, we discover that there's a budgetary implication. I'm concerned of this talking offline. We think we need to do it in public and add the group, not just one or two with the staff. So I've got a little concern about where we're heading with the discussion. It needs to be a group effort, not an individual effort. And finally, I think while we can, if we have different messages, say a message that's tailored to issues related to District 1, a different message for District 2, District 3, and District 4, that they all be kind of treated equally and distributed equally. I don't want to give one district preference over the rest of the city. So I think we need to be careful in how we do it, how we make a decision, and how we discuss it. It needs to be done in public, but it sounds like, for what staff has said, that it is something that can be done after the budget is adopted. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rogers has her hand up, and then you, Councilmember Andabamadu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing that I heard Councilmember Stev say was about the marketing document that was prepared a couple years ago, using that as a baseline to update. Go ahead.
That was the economic development strategy he was referring to.
Right, the strategy document, exactly. Using the strategy document as a baseline to update, and then using that as a tool to create how we want to proceed. So with the visioning, the marketing, telling the story, all that can be a part of that strategy. We look at the strategy and then we figure out how we can make this work within the strategy. So I think that there's a basic document there. It's just a matter of sitting down and thinking about, and that's not going to happen within the next couple weeks, I'm almost sure of that. But sitting down and looking at it to see how we can take the city of Bowie to the next level. So that, and I'll just say this much. Retailers look at rooftops, they don't look at how pretty your city is, all right? They're looking at the number of houses that you're building, and if a developer is doing it right, he'll put the houses in first, and then he'll come in and then he'll have the retail, because retail follows rooftops. But what we can do is tell a great story about the city of Bowie. And I don't think it's going to be a lot of rework, because you did something already that talked about why Bowie. So just taking that and kind of pulling that all together with a strategy to move forward. So I hear the conversations, and I don't think it's a individual. We're one Bowie. It may be 4 districts, but we're one Bowie. Each district has different personalities, I understand that, but we're one Bowie. So we need to tell one story, but that one story will include all the parts of Bowie. So I just wanted to put that out on record. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Andabamadu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I would be looking for from this body is an actionable next step and an actionable item, mainly because in this budget objective and under economic development, and I'm not saying this as a contentious point, but District 1, like in terms of the revitalization efforts, are clearly articulated. It has been very clear, and District 4 has made it very clear and loud that they also would like a revitalization effort. And so I do believe that we, unfortunately, myself respectfully as a council member who represents this district, can no longer wait to figure out what are all these strategies to figure out what the next operational step is. Now, I align and agree with the idea and the concept that we are one Bowie, so we need to tell one story, which is why I suggested and offered that we already did a marketing study to revitalize our brand as a city. So most of those touch points and those data points are already in there. And so for me, now what I'm trying to propose is, what is the next step to operationalize that and to now go tell the story and execute so that we can align with what it is that the residents are basically trying to articulate that they would like to see differently. And so maybe that is adding a budget objective to get the economic development strategy from council. Maybe that's aligning, but I think we need to agree on that before we so clearly move it on, because I need a priority point in there that District 4 revitalization is also prioritized. And these are my suggestions on how to move forward on those efforts.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And we're going to have to cut this conversation a little short. We're really going over. Councilman Steve and then Councilwoman Mamadu, I understand your point, and we do need to have what action we're going to do moving forward. Go ahead.
So to the mayor's point, Councilmember Rogers brought up earlier this, which is that in general, we want an objective for the council to actually come up with its economic development strategy going forward. And a lot of what we're talking about now is great material. I know we started a little bit of that, the process with draft missions and value statements at our last retreat. But as Councilmember Rogers suggested and as Councilmember Ndibamadu is raising, we have a lot to discuss. Would it make sense for us to add an objective under economic development to use the next stages of our council retreat process to formally discuss and adopt an economic development strategy as a city? Would that make sense? Would that kind of square the whatever it is you square? It's late. My metaphors are gone. I'm a half metaphor man right now.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a little bit different than the entire citywide strategic planning effort. It's sort of its own path.
So what you're saying is we need a different. Okay. So, but could we create? Forgetting
I'm sorry.
our.
What I'm saying is, it would not be, a focus of the day. It would be part of the entire effort to talk about the priorities in terms of what the council has and what you want to focus on across the whole menu. It's not going to be just one specific day as part of that, because if we just focused on economic development, we'd be sort of ignoring the other aspects of the city and things that we have. So it's part of the whole. If we want to have a time where we're focused on and really talking about economic development and having a serious discussion on that, we can talk about that separately if we want to spend a lot of time and do a real deep dive on it.
I think that's fine with me. I mean, and I'm not saying that it should be the only thing that we go. I know we have other stuff that we do, but maybe if we could set aside specific time where we specifically go over this issue and just make sure that it is among the things that we come to a consensus on. Is that what you're suggesting, Mr. Mears?
Yeah. It is among the things, yes.
Okay, understood. I think I'm on board with that. Yeah, okay.
Councilwoman, are you fine with that?
I think I'm fine with that. The only other thing I'd like to propose is to move forward with the meeting that's scheduled for June to discuss this matter in more detail. Unfortunately, just my perspective is I have a petition with over 300 residents who have signed it who are not happy in District 4 on the economic landscape. Those are currently residing District 4 residents. That amplifies the problem. It shows that there's a desire and that there's a need. And so I do think that that discussion needs to happen sooner rather than later. And if the quickest we can get it scheduled for is June, then so be it. Let's move forward on it.
Okay, as a council, we'll direct that we add that into the agenda. Okay, would you please?
I got it, Mr. Mayor.
No, I thought we already decided that earlier.
Yeah, we did, but I'm just making sure we're all fine.
We're-
Make sure we have that concrete, actionable item at this point. All right, everybody good? And I'll turn it back over to you, City Manager.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That ends our economic development discussion tonight. Mr. Cornwell. The next discussion will be emergency management. The Emergency Management Office plans and organizes and directs the emergency management programs of the City of Bowie and coordinates the planning, organization, and execution of local emergency management activities. This office represents the community on all emergency management matters and coordinates activities with the local, state, federal, nonprofit, and private agencies. It also oversees the development and maintenance of annual review of the city's emergency operations plan. Additionally, the Emergency Management Office provides a wide variety of emergency preparedness and emergency response training opportunities for staff and various community groups. So, over the last three years, we are all glad that we have a robust and strong emergency management directorate. and with the emergency that you're all aware of. The first objective for 2024 was to continue to develop an emergency action plans for all city-owned facilities. This was completed, the emergency action plan for the gym, and the development of emergency action plan for the ice rink is underway. Continued training for Emergency Operations Center staff on operations of the Emergency Operations Center, EOC. The Office of Emergency Management conducted several training sessions with EOC representatives, established positions, specific task books for each position in the EOC, and conducted an emergency function for EOC operation class this spring. C, enhance employee preparedness, public safety committee, and green team knowledge by conducting quarterly training programs to include topics such as CPR, emergency preparedness, and incident command. To date, the Office of Emergency Management has conducted 3 CPR AED training sessions for staff, and the office has also conducted staff seminars on hurricane and winter weather preparedness. Finally, the office has met 3 times this year for a public safety committee to provide updates on emergency management preparedness. D, develop a strategic plan for the Office of Emergency Management by 31 May 2024. This has been pushed forward to next year because at one point we were down. We did not have our 2 specialists. They moved to other opportunities, but we're full up now, effective May 20th. So we'll be back on course with that. Conduct an emergency response related functional and tabletop exercise that was completed, and which is basically an active shooter exercise. It's sad to say we need that, but if you watch the news today, we need it even more than anything else, especially in our schools. Conduct a functional exercise, test EOC operations by May the 31st. That was completed. You'll see the, under the workload performance, we're going to prepare, we project to prepare 500 more emergency preparedness packets and to distribute. Everything else should be rather, those columns should be the same. Objectives for 2025. Continue the development and update of emergency action plans for all city-owned facilities. 2, establish an emergency preparedness outreach program to educate the public, homeowners association, businesses, and other organizations on how to prepare and prevent emergency. 3, we conduct emergency response related functional or tabletop exercise by May of next year. D, coordinate and conduct an emergency preparedness expo for the community by September 2024. In particular, to evaluate the feasibility of conducting that emergency preparedness expo. Going to page 76, we'll see that we're authorized 3 people, the director and 2 emergency management specialists, and as I mentioned, we should have all positions filled by reporting date of May the 20th, hopefully. Fringe benefits, salaries $270,400, fringe benefits $102,800. A large amount, $81,500 under 52005, involves medical supplies for shelter, first aid kits, disaster preparedness materials, CPR equipment, and EOC equipment, food, and all those sorts of things. Under our supplemental program supplement, 55065 on page 77, it's $167,000, which includes the grants to the city of Bowie's Volunteer Fire Department to assist with CPR and Bowie membership recruitment, fire prevention training, other fund drives, disability insurance, incentive, life insurance upgrades to computers, hardware and software, and et cetera. Additionally, in addition to this amount, the city transfers an additional amount to the equipment acquisition and replacement fund for future replacement of a fire apparatus. So, what questions do you have for Mr. Cornwell and I related to emergency management?
Well, the one question I have for you, City Manager, and for you as well. By the way, you do a great job, and the city is very proud of our emergency management. But the one question I have is, when we talk about emergencies, and we're talking about our population speaking more languages than just English as we're doing that. And I know we talked about putting in for interpretation services at 500 a little earlier. Do we have a way that we currently, and bear with me because I don't know the answer to this, to be able to rapidly respond to being able to get someone out, to be able to do interpret in a case of an emergency, to be able to really communicate and be able to address those issues in an emergency situation for other than English-speaking citizens?
Yes, Mayor, it's a good question. Fortunately, we do have a lot of people on staff that speak different languages. That would be our first go-to. But if they're not available, the city and the county and the state also subscribes to an organization called the Language Line, where we can call the language line, provide them with information on exactly what language is needed, and an interpreter would give us a call right back to handle any kind of language barriers.
Yeah, I would also make a simple recommendation as Daniel Mears showed us recently when we had the Senegalese here, that maybe within the city phones and other things that we be given the opportunity for staff and others, even in your office, to download some of those that really work well, so that in case of emergency or needing it, that you'll be able to have some translation services available.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. You know, all of our city phones have that translator available through Google.
Good, so that there is something immediate that everybody has.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions? You know, Mr. Brady, Councilman Brady, yeah, you know,
It's
go
late.
right ahead.
It's
please.
late, I know, and we've carried this way beyond reasonableness. Now, actually, the point you brought up was a very valid one and interesting, because it's similar to what I was going to ask about anyway. But, and we do have the technology to do that. It's just a matter of providing the access, either whether it's through a communicator device that we have, or, because I thought I heard you say you could Google the language. That's how we did it for Senegalese. But I would think that if we have a robust translator that has all the different languages ready, that should be loaded and ready to go. We don't have to go through the search aspect of it. But that's good to hear that we're looking forward on that. The question I have is under Objective A for this year. You mentioned the two facilities that you're updating the plans on. How many facilities have been identified to have emergency plan written for, and what's the status of those? Do we have most of the facilities, some of the facilities, or just those two?
Currently, we have 3 completed. Okay. The OSHA standard is that every city-owned facility that has more than 10 staff assigned to that facility have an emergency action plan.
Okay.
My plan is to have an emergency action plan for every facility, regardless of how many people are assigned there, because you never know between the staff and the general public that are going to them, how many people are going to be into that building all at one time. It takes approximately 6 to 8 months to develop an emergency action plan, and when we do that, we go out and meet with the facility manager to get a great understanding of their operations, what they need to do during the day, traffic flows, and then we also do a threat and hazard analysis of that specific facility. We have to meet with IT, the GIS specialist, to come up with exit routing, for evacuation purposes, identify points of where people go to after an evacuation, so we can account for those people. It takes approximately 6 to 8 months to develop that plan, and then we need to go out and train all the staff on that plan and conduct different exercises so they're very familiar with how to put that plan into effect. So from start to finish, plan completed and everybody's trained, we're looking at close to a year. So right now we've had City Hall completed, we have the Senior Center completed, we just completed the gym. For the plan, we're starting to train their folks now on that plan, and we're also starting the next building, which is the ice arena. And we prioritized all of our buildings based on risk, threats, how many people are there, and how many citizens go to those facilities.
I appreciate that, and having spent my career in the nuclear industry, a research reactor, we had emergency plans and we constantly tested up and went through all that. I appreciate the effort you're doing on that. The follow-up question to that is, once we have them all written, and what's the frequency or periodicity for updating them over time? Or are we going to write them and put them on the shelf and collect dust?
Another good question. All of our plans are reviewed yearly, and we go through an update every 5 years.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilman Truesdale.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Mr. Mayor. Thanks a lot for all you do and staying up with us tonight. I'm not sure particularly who this question may go to, but pertaining to some of the funding, some of the grants that pertains to, I guess, emergency management. I know particularly, we just had a fire about a month ago with 15 families displaced. And I know, there's special appropriation grants and non-departmental grants that are out there from the city. How are we in position to receive those services, and how can we be more proactive, I guess, in establishing some funds in case something like this happen? Lord forbid, but things happen.
Well, Mr. Truesdale, currently, there's no policy in place for that sort of relief fund. All right, we don't have, there's no pot of money that we can use. I think in our grants office, they have access to $7,000 that we use to help the homeless. It's not as big a problem here as other places, but there is no relief fund in place or budget for this situation now, or situations like in the future. If now we believe that we can utilize some federal funds before this year, and they're working on that, so we can, and that could be a significant amount of money, more than $50,000, to help. But we're fortunate in that the monies have not already been spent on what was originally planned, but can be spent in this fashion. But we have no funding for that, and we have no formula. If we had, to distribute the money, that's a policy issue. The question would be to the council would be, is this something you all want to do and have prepared for, And if so, what is the monetary limit the amount of money that you would want to appropriate and put in the budget so we could disperse it? And how? That's the subject.
To add on to the city manager's comment, a lot of our interaction in terms of folks that are facing a particular emergency, our grants and housing staff often work as referrers to other agencies, not-for-profits. Red Cross, in terms of the immediate emergency response, is a great resource for us. They're a great partner and often come in as that first line of help and assistance to families. And many of the things that we do as a staff is connect people to resources, primarily through nonprofits, but also through the county. The county has a number of programs that they utilize to offer to help and assist. There was a mention earlier in regards to connecting with our county councilwoman Watson. We engage with that and try to work directly with sort of that larger social service agency that we have in the county and assist people in connecting with their resources.
Yeah, we also are, with regard to the fire situation, we're working with Councilmember Watson's office, hoping to get a grant that we, in next fiscal year, that we can use to help the current victims or like victims, should something like that occur 6 months down the road. But we do not have a large budget to support that currently.
Okay, so these county grants, they're annually, right? They are from that we can receive.
You mean this community development block grants? Yeah, we get that every year. And so we believe that we can utilize the remainder of that money that has not been spent to help in this situation because it's available, it is a use, and we're fortunate that we haven't spent the money. And also we're looking to get some money, I'm not sure about the number yet, from our county council member office who will have some money to disperse. And so we're going to certainly apply for that in May and hopefully get that money in July. And we can then help people too.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Council.
Just a really quick one. Thank you so much for this presentation. And I want to just say a brief thank you for all the work that you do, Lee. It's just really great work, so I appreciate it. My question is on the concept of relief funding. Do we have a direct kind of mechanism or process in how we work with like our state and maybe our federal offices like Van Hollen's office or Senator Cardin's office on like more of the federal side of this and relief funding that comes from there that they might have?
Relief funding for, what specifically are you asking for? Like a disaster relief fund?
Yeah, so like, for example, I know with some of the people some of the families that have been affected by the fire, essentially are still expected to pay their mortgage and are now going out and acquiring other apartments and, are just really having to pay and still having to pay for their homeowners association dues. And so my question is really around like that aspect of it. Yes, like disaster recovery and things like that. Like, do we have any mechanisms in how we work with the state and the federal government to maybe tap into resources that they have to maybe help people in times of need like this?
Unfortunately, no. And the reason for that is that for federal funding, there has to be a declaration of emergency. So the governor would actually have to declare a state of emergency for the state. And then there's a dollar value assigned to that. You have to meet a certain threshold for an emergency to get disaster relief from FEMA. Also, it's the same thing through the state. The state has a disaster relief fund that the legislators just passed this past year. However, the same thing applies. A local state of emergency has to be declared, and you have to meet certain thresholds for that to occur. So to answer your specific question, like these last two fires that occurred, there are no avenues, state or federal grants or funding to get any kind of relief for those folks.
I think it's important to mention for all the residents of Bowie, you need to maintain proper homeowners insurance, renters insurance that will cover you in the event of these disasters. You need to think about what your risks are, what your resources are, and properly insure yourself to be able to account for these scenarios, just in case you are displaced from your home, if you lose all the contents of your home. What does that mean for you financially? You really need to be looking at having adequate and proper insurance to cover your needs in case these disasters befall you.
Thank you. I think, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think that's a really good point, and I'm really happy that you explained that, because I do think that there are some constituents out here who do think that there are like different pots of money that might be aside that might be able to step in times like this. I don't necessarily know if this is helpful, but essentially when we do host some of the fairs that we have, or like some of the Bowie Fest or things like that, maybe it might be worthwhile just kind of like having a table where we kind of provide like some communications on this to kind of keep it top of mind for our residents to be thinking about this in the background on how to protect themselves against some of these things that might happen.
Yes, we do set up tables at most of the events, Bowie Fest, National Night Out, et cetera, and to hand out information such as that. But the Maryland Insurance Administration is a very good agency, a very good resource to get that information out. They work hard to let the folks in the state know about what insurances are available and necessary for situations just like this. A lot of events they will come to if it's large enough, so that's a good idea. We may be able to get in touch with them, maybe invite them to a few of our events.
I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this time, comments? Turning it back over to you, City Manager.
Okay, well, thank you. That concludes the city manager's department. We're going to move on to finance on page 87. The finance department functions to provide financial information needed for policy and administrative decisions. The financial information is used to assess existing financial positions of the city as a whole, or of a particular fund, program, or department to forecast the financial position over a given future time. 3, to monitor and control the flow of revenue and expenditures, maintain accountability for funds, and operate the city within the legal and budgetary constraints that you all set forth every year when you approve a budget. Objectives for 2024. Maintain the city's certificate of achievement for financial reporting and distinguished budget award. It was submitted in FY 2023, and we expect to win that award as we have done in the last 40 years. 2, under that point, receive the distinguished budget presentation we got it for FY 2024, adopted budget. The city has received the distinguished budget presentation award for the last 29 consecutive years, 96 to 2024. B, coordinate the annual budget and fiscal year audit, and those were both accomplished, and we're, of course, in the midst of our next situation. And the mid-year process begins in December, and we present a mid-year report to you all in February. We still have maintained our AAA bond rating, as you can see in the workforce, the workload performance indicators. And the objectives for 2025 are maintain the city's certificate of achievement for both financial reporting and distinguished budget presentation awards, coordinate the annual budget, fiscal year end audit and mid-year budget review. We'll be looking at another auditors this year. We'll put out to keep things fluid. Significant budget changes. Add a new accountant, grade 1, accountant 1, grade X112. Cost $67,957. As the workload grows, we need more people in finance. Create new classifications for reclass of current accounting techs, grade X108 position to accounting technician 1, X109, $1,501. Reclass the accounting technician senior grade from 110 to 111 at a cost of $13,163. That's a retention and promotion issue. Going over to the right, you see that our finance department, even though we manage millions of dollars, is rather small, and also they also help manage the water and sewer fund. We have 12.6 people that, if you approve this budget, and $1,119,400 in salaries, $351,600 in fringe benefits. We got $8,000 among the costs there are the independent audit fees, professional services. We use armored car, bank fees, actuaries. Also, we have subscriptions that support use of software that we use to maintain our city business. And there's a modest travel budget, which we use to attend conferences to make our accountants more proficient and efficient. Any questions regarding the finance department?
Councilwoman Rogers.
I'm sorry, I know it's late, but you know, finance is my thing, right? I
Sure.
just have an easy question. So I see your objectives for 2025. I'm looking at your workload performance indicators. Question, for your financial operations such as invoices paid, payroll, direct deposits, purchase orders, cash receipt transactions, and basically your financial operations, where funds are coming in or funds are leaving or paper is coming in and paper's leaving, do you have a technology issue, initiative, I should say? Do you have a technology issue around, say, for instance, direct deposit? Is it that people will have to opt out of paper, or is there an assumption when you get new payroll that they go to direct deposit?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. H. Byron Matthews, Finance Director. Good question. On our direct deposit for our new employees, it is an option, but most of them select direct deposit. We find that most people that are just receiving paper checks are normally in our labor areas. They tend to more want a paper check, but it is an option. The state precludes us from demanding that all employees use direct deposit.
Okay, and so the same difference around receipts. Are your vendors or people that owe the city money, do they have opportunities to go online to make payments for rent or for, tax payments or whatever? Is there an option to do it electronically?
Yes, all of our utility payments have an option to pay electronically, but there's also other fees that we deal with, especially on the vendor side. All the city's benefits are kind of handled electronically. We pay those vendors via a ACH draw on a designated account that the city has. All of our vendor payments are basically checks at this point. The ones that we do pay electronically are related to employee benefits, such as a 401k plan. Right now, Councilwoman, our efforts are focused on bringing technology to our office as it relates to purchase requisitions. Right now, that's a paper-driven process for us. We're in the process of implementing with the Department of Community Services that all of their purchase requisitions will be done electronically by the department. And we will be phasing that in throughout the city. We have basically done that on the check issuance side. Most of the purchase orders that come in and on our check issuance side, we're doing some of that for electronic payments. Still, that's centered around employee benefits. But as we finish with our requisition, we'll be moving to more of a vendor payment, ACH relationship. We move in that area cautiously because once those payments go electronically, you only have 48 hours to try to recoup that money. With a paper check, you can just put a stop payment on it and have those monies returned to you. Mm-hmm. So there are some ACH NACHA rules that we have to follow, and we're moving into that field, but we're taking it slow.
Okay, thank you. And that's what I needed to know, that you're moving in that direction, because I didn't see any objective here. And I know in financial processing, technology and getting the paper out of the process saves a lot of money. So thank you for that detailed explanation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any other questions? Sir?
This is what I do.
Wanda, Councilwoman, you finished?
I'm done. Oh.
Oh, I saw your mic on. I just wanted to make sure I didn't.
I had a hot mic.
Yeah. Back to you, City Manager. Hang in there, sir. Hang in there.
Thank you, Mayor. Our last section is on page 159. It deals with the non-departmental costs for the city. This budget section provides for expenditures which are not directly or exclusively associated with a specific activity or program. We try to capture that cost in this area. It normally includes our debt service, our consulting services, comprehensive insurance, and allowances for contingencies and transfers to other funds. As you can see in our expenditures for our proposed expenditures for FY25, debt services $3.1 million, contractual services $500,000, others charges $435,000, and our transfers are $8.9 million for a total of $12,975,300. We show you below on page 159 the debt services that we are currently dealing with. The 2015 debt is dealing with the City Hall improvements. The 2019 was the bond proceeds that we got for the new ice arena, which is now being allocated to all the other projects that are in our CIP plan. And then we are proposing a new bond issuance for the new ice arena, in which we have captured the interest payment on that proposed debt that we plan on spending within the fiscal year. Again, the contractual services include the insurance and the other things that I talked about. If we move on to page 160, we'll see other charges. These charges, again, are shared by all of the departments within the city. On the general fund side, water and sewer has its own allocation of educational reimbursements, incentive awards, reserve for contingency accounts, reserve for personnel adjustments, and our bottom section there, which is the most of the cost is in the transfer from the general fund to capital projects fund, which is 6.8 million, and equipment acquisition and replacement fund, the transfer from the general fund is 2 million. On page 161, we give you the current debt schedule for the outstanding bonds that the city has. And that's the conclusion of our non-departmental section. I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Do you have any questions? Seeing none? No, it's fine. I actually was looking at Clinton if he was going first. Did you have one? Okay. Councilmember Brady?
Oh, okay. I guess, thank you, Mayor. And you remembered my name this time. Just a quick, brief, small question. Under the incentive awards, 25,000 awarded employees for their suggestions, achievements, and outstanding service, which ultimately benefits the city. Could staff give us kind of a summary of how that has been over the last 3 years? What kinds of awards have been made? I'm curious if it's well utilized. I'm also curious if there's other ways we can do it to boost morale and the like. So just some background information would be helpful in this item.
Will do, Councilman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I would like to talk a little bit about what we are doing. He's going to get to the data on how we do it. We use it for employees who perform above and beyond the call of duty, if I can use that terminology. For example, when the Senegalese team was here, we had an employee who was a communicator, but was fluent in French, who volunteered to spend 4 hours translating and communicating with these wonderful people, when that just wasn't even her job. And of course, by the Fair Labor Standards Act, she had every right to say, well, that's not my job, let me go do my job. But she didn't do that. She was like, yeah, and so she got an award for that. So, but we'll get to the numbers, but that's the concept since I've been in charge of the city staff. When people do things above and beyond during COVID-19, storm responses, when we had the explosion over there in the senior home, and all of a sudden we had 90+ seniors in our facilities. And for the record, they were assisted and cared for by our rangers and janitorial service, who stopped that and all of a sudden became caregivers to people in their 80s and 90s. And they did a great job. So they got awarded for that. That's an example.
As I should. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any other questions at this time? Hearing none, I will declare this work session closed. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
And thank you to the staff, as always. Appreciate you. And to those who may have stayed up watching us tonight, thank you.